All right. All right. Happy Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I got to tell you guys, we have quite a show for you tonight. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. We are going to start things off with a special guest that is a part of an interesting project that I think you guys will be happy to hear about. First and foremost, let's go ahead and show you that thumbnail so you can see what we are discussing tonight. And then I will go ahead and bring him in. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are discussing, oh boy, and the theme is holy crap, and I think you'll see why. MARC Lamont Hill versus Piers Morgan. This was probably a very, very cringe conversation, not because of MARC, but because something that Piers Morgan decided to say during this panel. A lot of people are talking about this conversation. We have to get into that. We're also going to discuss, believe it or not, Joe Biden is still with us. He just had a first interview since the loss in 2024. And I feel that from watching that interview, I don't think that Joe Biden learned anything from the loss in 2024. We're also going to get into Marjorie Taylor Greene, apparently was on TYT. She is speaking out about a couple of things, more importantly, anti-war. But I noticed something in this interview, and I think we need to dive into that. Is Marjorie Taylor Greene anti-war? Does that include Israel? We're also going to discuss, if you haven't heard this story, guys, it is making all the rounds. The Ohio dad revenge, the gentleman there in the green square with the orange shirt. That is a big story. We'll get into that, and I want to get your takes about that. We're also going to discuss big story coming out of New York, Columbia University protests yesterday where over 70 people were arrested. Let's get into that. And of course, our guest is here to discuss the We Are Thor movement. So let's not keep them waiting. Our special guest tonight is Troy Ellis. He is running for Congress for District 10 of New Jersey, not through the Democratic Party, not through the Republican Party, but through a new movement that him and fellow comrades have put together called We Are Thor. Let's go ahead and bring in Troy Ellis. Troy, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's been a while.
Welcome back. So for people who may not have seen you here last time, you came onto the show before and you were talking about a contract and people running for office and actually being held accountable for what they say they're going to do. You're a part of this movement called We Are Thor. Can you explain to everyone what that movement is about?
Yeah, so We Are Thor stands the hope of the revolution. And pretty much everybody can relate to contracts. Like you sign a contract for your cell phone, you want to get a house loan, you sign a contract, you rent a car. Everything that you do is regulated by contracts, and there's always consequences if you don't fulfill it. The only profession that doesn't allow you or doesn't have to sign a contract is a politician. And I think it's the most common sense thing to do is to sign a contract with your constituents saying, I'm going to do certain things. And if I don't do it, then I have to sign or I have to pay back all my campaign donations out of my own pocket and resign at the end of your term. So they say the first one through the door gets the bloodiest, and I'm going to be the first one through the door in New Jersey, the 10th district. I'm going to run as an independent, and I am going to sign a contract with my constituents explaining everything that I'm going to do. For example, force the vote. That's going to be in the contract. My very first day, I'm going to put Medicare for all, limit college credit, medical debt, the massive veteran benefits, make college, trade schools, and public universities free, and reparations in the hopper the very first day. So
wow. So because this is, I think, some of the concerns that some of us had with members of the squad, where they said that they were going to fight for like Medicare for all, for example, and I know we'll get into that. But they said they were going to fight for those progressive issues. And what we found is that they pretty much cowered to Democrat leadership. And there seemed to be no way to hold them accountable, because once they were in Congress, that was kind of it. And they did not sign a contract. So you're saying this particular movement, you want politicians to sign a contract so that they are held accountable for what they campaign on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would love to see the mainstream media ask Bernie Sanders if he would sign a contract. Or how about AOC? If she actually really wants to run for president, sign a contract. You know, this new guy in Detroit seems very good. He's got a good commercial. I forget his name. Ask him if he'll sign a contract. I mean, it's the simplest thing. I don't understand why this hasn't come up in the past or why someone hasn't thought of it. To me, it's the most common sense thing. So
I think it makes a lot of sense. I want to show everybody the website here. Again, it's wearethor.org. Eric, you can put the link for that in the chat for people. We can do it together. Join our revolution. So they have a website set up here. They were labeled terrorists and traitors, so they became rebels and then became our founding fathers of the United States, the hope of the revolution. We are Thor. We are very angry. We are not alone, and we are just getting started. We are a group of military veterans who have a majority of registered Democrats and some Republicans within our group. Our organization is over 415,000 strong. It has to start somewhere, with someone, with some cause that ignites us to become united. So how did this come about, Troy? How did you guys get together and decide to start this?
Well, I work for a traveling nurses company, so I get to go all over the country for 13 weeks or more. So I actually get to sit down, go to restaurants, the mall, the different American Legions, VFWs, and talk to these veterans, talk to people. And it's the same thing across the country, whether you're red or blue. Healthcare is a problem. Credit card debt is a problem. The thing that they try to divide us on, and you got to remember, there are 16 million veterans in this country, and that's a huge voting block. Okay. And it just came out. We were talking one night and we said, well, what needs to be done? I mean, I was disappointed with Obama. I voted for him. Sadly disappointed. Bernie got me reignited into politics, and that really just, I can understand how people lose hope so easily. You know, you get so fired up and passionate, and then you get deflated like a balloon. But I can't stand by anymore. Something has to be done. As a veteran, as a Christian, as a human being, what's happening in the world, I just can't say, I can't sit on the sideline anymore, especially what's happening in Israel, Gazans. I mean, it's unbelievable that we stand by as a society and let this happen. I'm sorry, that's my dog Thor. The movement was named after my dog. So
this is very interesting. So you sent me.
Sorry. Come here.
Oh, go ahead.
No. Come here.
Puppy.
Come on, buddy. Come here, buddy. It's okay. Come here. Oh,
Hi, puppy. Oh.
He's very passionate about the issues too.
So you sent me 5 points that you wanted to discuss out of the 13. The first one is Medicare for all. So let's hear about that, because I'm starting to notice now I'm not hearing, well, with the exception of Bernie reintroducing the Medicare for all bill again, which I think, again, we all know that's not going to pass. Republican House, Republican Senate.
No.
It is performative at this point. But other than that, I'm noticing people aren't saying Medicare for all as much anymore. Some people are now starting to say just lower prescription drugs, or they're saying a public option. Why did you choose that one?
Medicare for all?
Yeah.
Common sense. It's all or nothing. I mean, this idea about compromising anymore, no way. No. Medical debt is $220 billion. It affects over 100 million Americans, 57 million households. Now, the numbers for what Medicare for all would cost differs. I went kind of in the middle. They say 35 trillion over 10 years. It's a huge number, right? How do you pay for it? And I know we're going to talk about, the veteran benefits and free college. And the one thing that always comes up is, how do you pay for it? It's very simple. Bernie had it right when he said 0.5% Wall Street tax speculation. Awesome. But forget 0.5%. If they were so against 0.5%, what do you think they're going to do with an 8.5% over 10 years, and then bring it down in the next 10 years to 7.5, and then a permanent 6.5 tax? It pays for everything. It wipes out our national debt also. I mean, not one tax dollar would be raised. So I'm sorry, I'm getting off, but back to Medicare for all. I'm sorry, it's all or nothing. I will not compromise. When they see me in the halls of Congress, they should turn the other way, because I am not their friend. I'm not looking to make friends with them. I am there for the constituents of District 10 and pretty much for all Americans. So.
Yeah, Medicare for all is a really big one for me because there's so many other industrialized countries in the world that have it, or they call it universal health care, similar aspect here, and the United States does not. And it's false that we can't afford to have it. We can afford to have it. There is money being spent in this country, I would say, in the wrong places. I think the defense budget is way too high, over $850 billion. That's ridiculous. Ridiculous. And it's continued to increase over the years. So I agree that we can have Medicare for all in this country. You mentioned force the vote as part of the contract. Were you shocked when the squad members decided not to force the vote for Medicare for all? What were you thinking during that point?
I was like, here we go again. I mean, we you get fooled once, okay, on me. Get fooled twice, okay, but fooled a third time, I mean, it gets a little bit frustrating, you know. The squad was never going to fight. I actually went to Ilhan Omar's campaign manager and met with her in the prior election and offered her to do this contract. And she turned it down, of course. And she only won that election by, I believe, 2.5 percentage points. So now we're talking with that veteran that ran against her to sign this contract. Now, I would like to see Ilhan Omar, you know, because out of all the squad members, I think she's the most, if you want to use the word honest, I guess. But I think this veteran is going to sign up with us on this contract. She won't get reelected.
Yeah, because for those who are not aware, her race was very close. She almost, didn't make it out of her primary. But so let me get this straight. So you approached her team to ask if she would sign this contract, and she wouldn't do it?
Nope. No, they're all in it for themselves. I mean, the contract. Look, I'm not a perfect person. I've made mistakes. You know, everybody makes mistakes, right? As you get older, you're supposed to want to do better. You should want people around you to be better, right? I'm not the perfect person, but this contract makes me the perfect candidate. And anybody that signs up for this, you are the perfect candidate. You don't have to be the perfect person anymore. You don't have to be like these people like, oh, look at my perfect family, look at my perfect dog, look at this. No, because a contract holds you accountable. People say that money runs the world. I disagree with that. It's the contract that makes you pay that money to the corporations. Everybody can relate. Every single, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green Party, whatever, we're all run by contracts.
Very interesting. Very interesting there. The second point that you have is eliminate college, credit card, and medical debt. Why those three things?
I think people deserve a second chance or a third chance. I can see where, like during COVID, your business was closed down. You couldn't go out. You couldn't work. So you had to put your food and your bills on credit card. It did not seem fair, especially when the credit card companies made their biggest profits in the history of credit card companies. It's unbelievable. So I believe giving the American people a second chance, like wipe it out completely. I'm not saying that, hey, if you want to charge your credit card up again, that's on you. This is a one-time deal to give you a second or third chance at making life better and helping your family out. So again, to me, this is common sense.
Yeah, you mentioned the pandemic, and I got to say, I'm in Massachusetts. Our state was locked down during the pandemic. I know a number of people that had to put their rent on their credit card, that had to put groceries on the credit card because they lost their jobs, or the company, the business that they worked for was laying people off like during that time. I think a lot of people don't realize if you lived in a state, like my parents live in South Carolina, so they're way down there, right? their life for the most part didn't really change much. Like, yes, obviously like they had to wear a mask at some point, but this was way after, like we were even like locked down here in Massachusetts, but their life went on as it continued. Like they weren't locked down. People were still going to the beach, etc.
Really?
The businesses and everything was still open. Like, yeah, they didn't shut the businesses down like they did in Massachusetts. And so I think that some people who lived in those states may not understand that for many of us that lived in the states that were locked down, if when the business is closed, especially if you worked for like a mom and pop business, you weren't getting paid, but you still had to pay rent. You still had to pay for groceries, And yes, the PPE loans came in. Some of them went to the right people. Some of them did not. Some of the governors didn't handle those phones.
There was a lot of fraud involved in that.
There was a lot of that. And there were some small businesses that for them, it was too late by the time that money came through and they did have to close. Even in a city here like Boston, which has a lot of tourism. We're talking about restaurants on that tourist strip on Boylston Street that have been around for years that had to close because of that. So I think a lot of people, if you were in a state that wasn't locked down, you may not realize what did people do? They went to their credit cards to pay for those things and to make those payments. So the credit card one is a big one. The medical debt one is another one where even if you do have a job and you have health insurance, that doesn't mean you're not going to have medical debt.
I just think it's the right thing to do. I think at some point we have to look in the mirror and say, I might be doing okay now, but what about next week? So my neighbor doesn't have what I have, but I want to help them. And again, not one tax dollar. So this is what I'm hoping the people, the constituents in District 10 will feel is that not any tax dollars is going to be raised for you, right? It's all going to come out of the Wall Street speculation in the 1%. All right. They made billions, trillions of dollars during the pandemic. I'm sure they can pay 6.5 Wall Street speculation. I don't think it's that big of a deal. So.
And I worked in the universities for over 10 years. And I can tell you, you mentioned eliminate college debt. These kids are not making the money to pay off these loans.
No, I personally, I don't have any credit card debt. I was brought up old school is that if you don't have the money, you don't spend it. Now that's just me. I know a lot of the younger generation, it's all about credit card putting it, and it's easy to put it on a credit card. I mean, you go out and all of a sudden your bill's like $300, $400. You don't think about it because it's not coming out of your bank account. So my philosophy is a little different, and that just works for me. That's all.
I hear you. Another one that you mentioned here, and this is a big one in particular for me. I talk about it on the show a lot, which is reparations. And I got to say, like the only party that I know of that has that as a part of their platform and has been that way for years has been the Green Party. Why do you have it a part of We Are Thor?
Simple. It's a debt owed. It's a debt that needs to be paid. No more said about it. I'm not an expert in it. I've looked at it online and watched different interviews, and it seems like people can't come to a consensus. Now, I do agree with the lineage. If I get elected into Congress, I will have a committee look into it. You come up with a bill, I'll put it in the hopper. My job as a congressman is to find a way to pay for it. I found a way to pay for it. Give me the bill, I'll put it in there. It's as simple as that for me.
It's so interesting that the Democratic Party refuses to make this a part of their platform, considering the fact that they depend on the Black vote in order to win, which is one of the reasons why Kamala Harris lost, because she received, lower support from Black voters than Biden, Hillary, and of course, Barack Obama. So it's just bizarre to me that they do not have that as a part of their platform. It does not make any sense to me.
Well, I've been talking some meetings. I'm in Minnesota right now, and I've been having some meetings with some of the upper echelon, richer people, the establishment, as you call it. And I always ask them, I said, why do you think that the 1% won't allow Medicare for all or free college to pass? And every single one of them, their response is, it's money. And it's about winning. They don't want to lose. And at some point, it's almost like a gambler, right? Being a billionaire or a 1%er, it's all about win, 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 and becomes addicting. And that's all they think about. They don't think about the consequences for us, you, or for the, the peasants. It's not about that anymore. So
you're right. It's all about Wall Street. They love Wall Street. They can bail out Wall Street, but not the American people.
Let me ask you a question. One of the things that was tossed around is there has to be consequences, right? So I'm willing to take the consequence and sign a contract, but what about the voter? People always say that they vote against their own self-interest, and then you have the biggest block of voters is the non-voter. So how do you get them to vote? Now, this is outside of the box and it's controversial, but what if there were consequences to the voter? So everyone that voted for Trump in this last election, there are real life consequences to American citizens right now. So, for example, I'll just use Medicare for all. I'm not saying that this is going to be law, but it is something to be discussed. So let's say you have two candidates, right? And one says, I'm going to get Medicare for all and I'm going to sign a contract for it. And the other one says, well, no. Well, if this candidate wins, then everyone that voted for them gets Medicare for all, and everybody that didn't doesn't. Not saying that you won't get it, in the future, but for that 4 years, no. Why not? There has to be consequence. People have to be informed. And I know it sounds crazy. So what's your thought on that?
I personally don't agree with blaming the voter. Just because, again, most voters are informed by corporate media. And that's typically like what they know and what they believe to be true, although that is changing, and what they go by. I go back to Bernie 2020 and 2016, and I think about how many people were misled because corporate media said they're going to take your health care away and you're not going to have any health care. You know how many people fell for that? Like that was the interesting part. So I think that a lot of people, they do believe what is said on corporate media, a lot of the voters, but I don't think the voters should be punished. I do believe that the politicians should be held accountable if they agree, they run on these issues, and then they get into office and they vote for legislation or said legislation that goes against exactly what they campaigned on. I do think there should be accountability there. And I honestly think if we had that said accountability, I would say half of Congress probably wouldn't even be there. But because they wouldn't run. Because they wouldn't run in the first place.
No, but the contract is a simple breach of contract. So, for example, everyone that votes for me, right? And I go into Congress and let's say I don't force the vote. So I do something that's against the contract. Okay, so it has to be a majority of the people that voted for me that then could recall me, right? And then I will resign and I'll pay back all the campaign donations. I mean, it is a tricky thing. They're working on the contract right now. A breach of contract is the simplest way to do it, to make it viable. Because then if you don't have a majority of people that are going to recall you, you'll have some nut job that will, I don't agree with you, whatever, you didn't do this. Right? Yeah,
I'm very much aware. And the last one I think that is also really important, make college, trade schools, and public universities free. Let's talk a little bit about that.
I just think it's a natural progression of a society. Other countries in Europe have free college. I want to bring up Israel because, again, they have Medicare for all. They have free college. Our tax dollars are going towards that. I think we have enough problems here at home where we need to take problems here instead of the rest of the world right now. And college gives upper hand to a lot of Americans that can't afford it, that can, have a better life. So again, those 5 things that we're talking about, to me, they're just all common sense things that is supposed to make society better. And getting rid of the debt is just giving people a chance, another chance at life. So if we had all 5 of these things right now, we might not be worried about Israel or the war or these other things. I mean, if you go back when you're talking about the contract, if Obama had to sign a contract like this, then Roe versus Wade would have been codified. If Trump had to sign a contract like this, then the wall would have been built and we wouldn't be with this immigration problem right now. So again, to me, it's just common sense. There is one thing Like being a veteran, when you look at society, right? Like we fought, and you're from a military family, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we see things sometimes as black and white. And I just cannot believe what is going on, that society, we're regressing, and how do you stop that regression? I mean, somebody has to do something. Somebody has to put themselves up, to get bloodied. I can't be the only one. I'm hoping that other people will come up and have the courage and be noble and do the right thing and sign this contract. It's not going to be easy. They're going to come after. Look what they did to Bernie. They made AOC cry on the floor. Come on. This is not fighting. I guess if I have one wish, I wish people would wake up and not vote off emotion, but vote off of what's right. And too many times do people vote with their emotion, or they vote because of their racism or because of their ignorance. It's
personality.
Or personality, correct. Like with Trump. My friend and I, we were talking about this, and he asked me, and we have these like late night conversations. He's out in New York right now. And we talk, he goes, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to put yourself out there? And my response, well, someone has to. And we started talking, and then, we were having a beer over the phone, and he goes, well, what are you willing to do? And I thought about it, and I said, wow, that's kind of a loaded question. And I thought, you know what? I'm willing to do almost anything. And then he asked, well, what would you do? And I said, well, what's the number one problem in District 10? Jeff Bezos is a huge problem. Amazon is a huge problem for my constituents. A lot of them go over to Staten Island and work in that warehouse over there. And I said, well, how do you stop them? And now this is, I said, if I could, I would fight him in a ring to the death. I would. That is what I'm willing to do for the constituents. And granted, I know it's a little crazy, but, if we're in such a regression in this country, if we're in the last stages of the Roman Empire, then I guess gladiator, having a fight to the death would be simple, right? It's like taking a chess piece off the board. Of course, he wouldn't do it because most billionaires they're another billionaire cowards. Billionaires always pay other people to do their things, right? They never do it themselves. Mark Zuckerberg, right? He stole the idea for Facebook. My point is he would never do it, even though, and we looked at the numbers, don't laugh now. If there was a fight like this, it would raise $2 trillion to $6 trillion worldwide. That's an amazing number just to see two people fight to the death. But he wouldn't do it because the establishment couldn't allow, even if there's 1% chance that I would win, I would become the richest man in the world. I would get Medicare for all. I would go after the establishment. I would do everything possible. But that's not it. That wouldn't stop him either. You'd have to get what? It's illegal to fight to death. I remember back in the day, Las Vegas changed its rules just so they could have a fight one time. And I'm sorry, I'm going off. I'm just going from this conversation I had with my Army buddy, right? If Trump gave a pardon to the two people that were fighting, and you gave them like 0.5%, that's $20 billion. Trump could force. Do you know by executive order you can cancel government contracts?
I did not know that. Interesting.
So he could force people's hand to force, like he could go to Amazon and say, I'm going to cancel your contracts if you don't allow unions in the warehouse, or if you don't allow certain. He could cancel some. I forget the airline that just had trouble. Refresh my memory, Sabby.
Southwest, or there's a number of them that have had trouble. Delta.
Yeah, he could cancel their contracts, or at least threaten to cancel their contracts if they don't get their shit in order. It's just all one big mess.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. Well, Troy, I think this is an interesting project. Where can people go to follow?
Go to wearethor.org. There's going to be my website for the candidacy for the run for Congress. And again, I urge other people to look at this, and they can come up with their own contract for their own district. But I think it is the way forward. You talk about how you can't fight within the Democratic Party. That is so true. My other thing also, I'm sorry, someone should ask Jill Stein, because I know you and I both voted for the last presidential election, right?
Yep.
Someone should ask her if she would sign a contract and see how it works out in the next presidential election.
Well, I will be a part of a panel with her on Saturday, so I can ask her. I can ask her on Saturday. She probably would.
You think so?
She probably would.
I mean, I know a lot of people that would vote for her if she said, I mean, if you just made it simple, 5 things in the contract that this is what I'm going to do and do and do. I mean, the other thing for the Green Party is fine. You can do that as president, but those 5 things are what a majority on both sides of the aisle agree on. So I would love to see if she would sign a contract. I definitely vote for her. I know a lot of people that would vote for her again. And she could get past, what was the threshold that she had to get past?
The 5%.
She could easily get past that with a contract. Easily.
That's interesting. Well, I will ask her. But Troy, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sabby.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Troy Ellis. An interesting project there. Again, for those, if you came in a little bit later, I do want to show you that website is called We Are Thor. This is the We Are Thor movement. We can do it together. Join our revolution. So check that out when you get a chance. Dun, dun, dun. We have quite a bit to dive into tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, let's go ahead and shout out patrons. We'll go to comments and then we'll dive into the next story. We will do call in tonight. I know it's been a while, but we're back in action, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Really do appreciate you, fam. If you're interested in being a Sabby, if you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters, don't forget about those guys as well. We also have Sabbies doing the damn thing. And of course, we have members. All of their names are listed here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Really do appreciate you. Tonight's theme is holy crap. The reality is I'm running out of ink for my paint pen. So I have to get another paint pen, and I was going to write a theme a little bit longer, but again, I'm running out of ink. So I just said it's holy crap. And I think you'll see that when you see the stories tonight. I don't know how else to describe it, but tonight's stories are pretty like, holy crap. For the most part. So we have quite a bit to discuss, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, let's go ahead to some of the comments here. Yeah, Tim. Yeah, I saw this. I wanted to pin this. Tim said, Sabby, I heard Trump just cut ties with Bibi Netanyahu. Did you hear that? Free Palestine. F yes. Have a great show. Sabby. Hello, Eric. And chat. Free Sudan. Free Congo. Free Palestine. So that is not true. I saw it too. It's already been debunked. By the way, the outlet that they said provided that information, it's already been, even people have checked Grok. I've checked a number of sources. That's not, there is tension between the two, but he has not rejected him. Shout out to John. Pastor Wheeler says, hello, Sabby and Eric. Oz is in the house. This has come up in the past. Not new. In fact, I tried twice to get candidates to sign a contract in the 90s and in 2003. Interesting, Oz. I will have to talk to you about that. I didn't know that. Thank you, Roger, for the super chat. TRICARE for all, nationalized healthcare. Thank you, Anthony. Explain 1 million plus enrichment of leaders getting choice trade info with a salary of 100+ K. Yeah, and I think you guys know I'm really, really against the insider trading. really against that. But you're right, Anthony. Thank you, Marlon Wells, who's been a member for 3 months. Can't say it enough. Declare your independence. Register as an independent or Green Party. It is time to really take our country back. Yeah, I support this as well. People registering as an independent, especially, and I said this before, especially Black people. No, you don't owe the Democratic Party your voter registration. You really don't. But we are going to dive into our next stories. So this one is crazy. A number of people have been asking, why aren't there any protests for Gaza under Trump? Well, there are. There have been a couple, and I've covered them on the show. And I'm going to cover one more recently that just happened the other day. And this was at Columbia University, where pro-Palestinian protesters occupied the library on campus. And over 78 people were arrested. It turned into a straight out brawl in New York City. We'll go ahead and get into that clip here. Check it out.
And some breaking news to tell you about right now. Within the last few minutes, Columbia University directing NYPD onto their campus to remove protesters who refuse to leave the school's library. Now, you can see police officers, some of them even in riot gear, removing some of those students in zip ties. And right outside, clashes between police and protesters turned violent with those heavy metal barriers being pushed into the air. And this is what the scene looked like inside a Butler library a little bit earlier. Students protesting in a standoff with school public safety officers. The school saying 2 of those officers were hurt. Outside, a large group of students gathered earlier, attempting to force their way into the library. Remember, the school was a site of those encampments last year protesting Israel's war in Gaza. Now a major target of President Trump over allegations of anti-Semitism. Let's get right over to NBC's Emily Aketa over at Columbia University right now. Emily, I saw something happening behind you right before we came to you. What's the situation looking like right now, and how many people have been removed?
Well, Gotti, those arrests are still underway as we speak. So far, I've counted 78 people ushered out by the NYPD of the library, which you can see behind me just ahead of finals week. They're largely walked out in twos, flanked by police, their hands behind their back, tied with zip ties. One protester had just shouted "Free Palestine" as they have been ushered out by the police. This comes after demonstrations flooded into the school's library earlier this afternoon. Columbia University posting a series of updates and statements, first saying that for the protesters who refuse to leave, who refuse to provide identification and disperse, they could face possible arrest. Well, several hours later, they called in the NYPD, and that is what you see behind me. There are barricades, there are special response teams who have been going in and out of the library that university officials say have been occupied by protesters. It's not just tension spilling over inside of the campus, but also outside, maybe about 50 yards or so from where I'm standing. You might even be able to make out the demonstration still underway right now. But earlier, there were some serious physical clashes between pro-Palestinian protesters and police. Police trying to use these barricades you'll see behind me to push people back. And then
I have to pause here for just a second because I want you to see this scene. Okay. So first and foremost, Columbia University, the history shows that students have occupied halls on campus before when they were protesting against apartheid in South Africa. This isn't new, right? The media wants you to believe that. This is why it's always important to know history. But I want you to look at this image because this reminds me of something that I've been watching recently. I started watching this docuseries about the Vietnam War, and I haven't finished it yet. I'm on part 2. And I got to tell you, I need to bring on a guest that is an expert about the Vietnam War and the protests. If you know of someone in that area, let me know. Because I'm noticing a lot of similarities between the Vietnam War and the genocide in Gaza. And by those similarities, I mean like what's happening in the United States. This image right here in particular looks very familiar to me. It looks similar to other images that I saw during the Vietnam War protests in this country. Don't forget, during the Vietnam War, the protests started on campuses first, and then larger communities joined. Don't forget, during the Vietnam War protests, the cops were against the protesters, whether they were peaceful or not. And this is what I was trying to tell people. Police serve the empire. They're not there to really serve the greater good. Because if you were there to serve the greater good, you would understand and support people protesting against the Vietnam War. If you were really there for support, you would understand and support these kids protesting against the genocide. So there is a connection. There's a gentleman that's going to be coming on to the show. I'm recording an interview with him on Friday. He's going to be coming on. His name is Alec. He just wrote a book called Propaganda. And he has made the connection between the police and the media and the politicians and these wars. All of this is connected. And so all of these entities work together to try to silence the masses, to try to brainwash the masses, etc. I don't see New York police officers use this kind of force on murderers. Now, all these cops can show up and play bad in front of kids protesting, but they can't find the guy who just killed people. Answer that for me. Why can't they figure that out? Why can't they use our tax dollars to find the people who are out there murdering people? But if there's a protest, everybody can drop what they're doing and show up, and they can try to harass and threaten and instill fear in these kids who were doing exactly what happened during the protests against South Africa's apartheid. This is Columbia University. This happened on Wednesday. Yes, the protests are still happening. Corporate media just isn't covering them as much. That's why people don't think they're happening. Let's continue.
The protesters then pushing back and forth there. Earlier today, it was campus police, security officers who have been trying to hold this building on lockdown. And the university said that 2 campus officers were injured as they say some pro-Palestinian protesters had tried to force their way into the library, Gotti. This all comes amid President Trump, the Trump administration's crackdown on what they call harassment of Jewish American students, even cutting hundreds of millions of dollars of funding to federal funding to Columbia University, trying to stem pro-Palestinian protests, Gotti.
I mean, and so the protests that are there right now, the ones that we could hear chanting in the background, is it still a very sizable group, or does it seem like things are starting to disperse?
It is a sizable group outside of campus. It's hard to say how many people are still in here. Like I mentioned, there were more than 70 people that have been arrested. I've seen social media posts estimating 100 people, at least 100 people had gotten into the building. So it's unclear how many people may still be in the library, but outside we continue to see protests. They continue to move throughout the campus. You hear those calls for divestment from Israeli-backed companies from the school and protection from ICE on campus, Gotti, as we've heard before. Columbia University posting a statement that reads in part, disruptions to our academic activities will not be tolerated and are violations of our rules and policies. This is especially unacceptable while our students study and prepare for final exams. Mayor Eric Adams also posting to social media, addressing parents, urging parents to call their kids if they're being a part, saying that breaking the law is not okay.
So I would say that these students are exercising their First Amendment right. Again, this has happened at Columbia University before. And I think Patrick here has a good point. Why do people still go to that school? That's a good question. I'm curious to see what their enrollment will be like for fall. Curious to see. It's not just Columbia, but that's a good question. Now, Status Quo was actually there on the ground. And I want to show you what they captured. NYPD rough up and arrest pro-Palestinian student outside Columbia University. You guys have got to see this. There was actually someone going out on a stretcher. Watch this.
Get out of the street! Get out of the street! Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up! Get out of the street! Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up! Get off his back! Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up!
So do you see the way that the police are handling this student? Now I want to ask you guys a question. Did this kid kill anybody? Did this kid physically hurt a person? Because from what I understand, they didn't. This is the police pushing these students around, trying to instill fear in them and show them, oh, you think you're a tough guy? We're the tough guys. Don't mess with us. Don't forget who trains the NYPD. The NYPD is trained by the IDF. All of this is connected. This is the NYPD trying to protect Israel. And let me ask you a question. If it is really about discrimination, if it's really about harassment, oppression, as the politicians are trying to say, why is it that when people were protesting against police brutality, when they were protesting against discrimination, why is it that the police were on the side of the people doing the killing and discrimination? Because the same way you see these police officers treating the pro-Palestinian protesters, that's the same way they treated the BLM protesters, including the peaceful ones. I was there. I know. Even the peaceful ones, that's the same way they treated them. So the police, when you hear these police officers, and you're going to hear the statement from Eric Adams, when you hear them say, we will not tolerate this type of behavior, and they're harassing other students or whatever, that you can call BS on that, because they didn't care a damn when people were harassing Black students. They didn't give a damn. When people are harassing Black people, they do not give a damn. It is not about that. This is not an oppression Olympics. What this is really about is the police operating for the state of Israel. Direct line, trained by the IDF. And they continue to use those same actions that they learned from them against Americans. Right here on the street. Right here on the street. Not to mention, as I've said before, many of the protesters are Jewish Americans. That's how you know it's a joke. This is all a joke, you guys. But the way that they are handling this kid is absolutely ridiculous.
Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up! Stay back. Back up! Look at my shoe, man. You're breaking my fucking arm. So move! Back up!
Did you hear that? So the kid said, you're breaking my arm, and the cop said, so move. This whole tough guy routine. And when they come face to face with real, like people who have actually murdered people, when they come face to face with murderers, they don't act like this. A lot of times they run away. They're acting like bullies at this point. These kids, there's no weapon. These kids don't have weapons.
Back up, please. Back up. Shame on you! Who are you to turn your head? Shame on you! Fuck you, pigs!
All of this for a teeny tiny state here called Israel, where everybody gets free healthcare and free college. Look how they're willing to go above and beyond for them. Eric Adams, of course, had to respond to this. I want you to see what he had to say.
Fix the recurring problem here.
Yeah, and I think that's important what you said. Crime has decreased. The last quarter, the lowest number of shooters in recorded history. Do we have these high-profile cases with 8.5 million people? Yes. What you expect from the police department is to make apprehension. We did it immediately. A large number of gang members who not only assaulted police officers but carried out about 20 robberies in this city. Repeated offenders, some of them were arrested 8 and 9 times. We're we're doing our job, and that is apprehend, keep the peace. Now it's time for the other part of the criminal justice system to do their job. Lawmakers, judges, making sure we don't have these repeat offenders coming on our streets.
And Mayor Adams, has the Trump administration relayed to you that they'd like to accelerate the pace of deportation from New York? And if so, how would the city be involved in that?
No, we have not received any communication of that magnitude. The law is clear of what we can do and what we can't do. We collaborated with the ICE and HSI and others when we took down 27 gang members that were known for sex trafficking, carrying guns, and committing crimes. But when it comes down to deportation, the law does not allow a city employee to collaborate on deportation.
Would you like to see that law changed in the city?
There's many laws I would like to see. I would like to see us expand how do we deal with people who commit crimes. Those individuals who are doing right, serving the city, trying to pursue the American dream, like many immigrants have done before them. I'm in support of that, and we're going to continue to be supportive of those who are law-abiding citizens. I want to go after those who are going after innocent people in the city.
So he told the parents to call Columbia, et cetera. And I want to bring up a point that he made here when he talks about, criminals and all of that jive, right? Like a crime. According to Eric Adams' recent statements and behavior, and especially the NYPD behavior, you guys consider protesting to be a crime. Even when there was the pro-Palestinian protests in Chicago outside the DNC convention, Chicago had the streets lined up with police officers harassing people who were peacefully protesting. The video footage I saw showed cops pushing against protesters who kept their hands to themselves. And this is why I say we really got to check back in and see what happened during the Vietnam War and the protests during that point in time. And I say this because, guys, there's a lot of similarities, even when it comes to the presidential elections during that time. There's similarities between LBJ and Biden during that time. If you look at LBJ deciding, I'm not going to run for re-election, Joe Biden deciding he wasn't going to run, and Kamala stepping in, there's comparison there between Nixon and Donald Trump, coming in and what they promised, et cetera. But when you look at the protests and the actions that were taken, the Vietnam War protests were huge throughout the country, and the police were very militant towards the protesters. And in many cases that I saw and that I learned about recently watching this docuseries, were escalated by the police, not by the protesters. So we have to look back at history so that we can see that nothing is new under the sun, as my grandmother used to say. A lot of things are just a repetition of history. It's just over a different issue sometimes. So I definitely want to talk to someone about that, because I kind of wonder, like, where do we go from here? But the way they were treating those kids, those college students, all I have to say is, holy crap. Holy crap. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Sparky. Love you, Sabby. Thank you. Love you. Thank you for this one as well, Sparky. The government is worse now on protesters than in the Vietnam War days. Kent State was an anomaly. Thank you, Ace Play. Moreover, 100. I think you mean moreover. 100 Jewish men and boys chased and harassed a woman, calling for grape and chanting death to Arabs, but peacefully students are the problem. Yeah, and we talked about that on this show too. Where were all those cops to protect that one woman who was facing up against a giant mob, right? Thank you, Mark. Sabby, the IDF taught the cops to treat Americans like the IDF treats the Palestinians. There you go. Thunder Buddy says Ivy League schools are kind of lame now anyway. That's a good point. Thank you, Wasim. It was revealed the IDF sniper that unalived Shireen was unalived in Jenin by resistance. Interesting. Thank you, Sammy. You should have Viet Thon Nguyen on the show. He regularly draws similarities to Gaza and Vietnam. He was also interviewed in the Vietnam documentary. I can try. Thank you, Sammy. Thank you, Joseph. Don't forget to like the stream, comrades. Yeah. Thank you, Wasim. Why would anyone go to CUNY? They locked up the library holding protesters and they broke fire safety codes to put students at risk for isn't real. Thank you, Anthony. Propaganda is still effective. So should counter propaganda. Social media truth. Israel is an ally, but not our friends. I don't even consider them to be an ally. Thank you, Wendy. Zionism rules our country. It's ridiculous. Yes, it is. Thank you, Roger. Foreign students don't know QI abolished NYPD. And shout out to Dedication, who just became a Sabby member. Give Dedication a big whoop, whoop. Thank you, Marlon. The Jewish people and the politicians definitely have too much power over the narrative with reverse psychology and propaganda used to shut down freedom of speech. I would say Zionist, because like I said, a lot of the protesters are Jewish. The Constitution is no longer the law of the land. Shout out to Joseph George for becoming a Sabby member. Whoop, whoop. And shout out again to Joseph George, who just gifted 10 Sabby memberships. Thank you. Thank you so much. If you haven't done so, folks, go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share like a Care Bear. And we'll get that comment on Rockfin and we'll move on to the next story. Gotta keep it moving on. Thank you, Roger. Instead of a contract, how about a CBI amendment saying we the people would have to sign off on the budget by the legislative branch, placing it on the ballot for a second signature after the executive gives their signature. They'd have to outline what they're cutting, by how much, and what they are increasing spending on and by how much. That's an interesting idea as well. And thank you, Stephanie. Hi, Sabby. I was a high school student protester against the war on Vietnam. I highly recommend the book Who Spoke Up? American Protest Against the War in Vietnam, 1963 to 1975 by Nancy Zarolas and Gerald Sullivan. An excellent reference. I think Sullivan is still alive. I don't know about Zarolas. Thank you so much for that info. Thank you. I will look into that. You guys are so helpful, man. You're so helpful. And thank you, Joseph, for this one as well. America doesn't have friends or allies. It has vassals and enemies. We are moving on to the next story. This is interesting. I don't know if everyone saw this, but it's making the rounds. And apparently Marjorie Taylor Greene was on TYT for an interview with Cenk Uygur to talk about anti-war movement, an area that they have in common. But I noticed something during this conversation, and I'm going to show you guys a moment where Cenk did not push back on that I think was will be revealing for people if they watch the entire interview, because that's towards the end of it. There was something that Marjorie Taylor Greene said when she was questioned about Israel in particular that I think should give people pause. I'm also going to show you a comparison to the way that she responded to Cenk Uygur about the protesters compared to the way that she responded to Piers Morgan about it. So we need to ask the question, what's really going on with MTG? Let's go ahead and bring in this part of the interview here. We have different moments that we want to discuss. Let's dive in here.
But Representative Greene, we're having these conversations because the Trump administration is filled with neocons. If it wasn't filled with neocons, we wouldn't need this conversation. He said anti-war. You're very clear about that. You're super clear about that. I'm clear about it. But all of a sudden, we're having a conversation about how we might go to war. So how do you think the neocons got there, and how powerful do you think they are within the Trump administration?
Well, I would say they're powerful on both sides of the aisle, to be honest with you. We saw Democrats in the House and Senate vote overwhelmingly to fund the war in Ukraine. And we saw Republicans do the same thing in the House and the Senate. So,
pause. Did everybody notice what she just did there? He specifically asked her about Donald Trump having neocons in his cabinet, and she said both parties have this issue. Did you notice that? And it's true that both parties do have neocons, but he was specifically asking her about Trump's administration. What she's doing right here is she's showing people, and everybody that saw this interview on TYT, and this should be interesting. She's showing everybody that both parties have this issue, that both parties are warmongers. There may be said politicians that don't support the wars, but the parties, for the most part, do, because they're bought off by Wall Street and the military-industrial complex, right? So I'm really curious to see how some of the viewers responded to that. Let's continue.
I would say this is not a one-party problem. This is a two-party problem. And this is also the military-industrial complex that is very, very powerful, because they keep, no matter what administration it is, they somehow find a way to get their foreign wars. However, I really give President Trump a lot of credit for standing up against this. And the announcement he said today was, I think, extremely significant. But we still have a long ways to go. And no matter who is president of the United States, it's the most powerful person in the world. That's who President Trump is right now. And everybody is texting him, calling him, and doing everything they can to get in the Oval Office or to somehow find time with him on the weekends. So I don't think they'll let up anytime soon. But I will say this, I think it's up to the American people to continue to voice their concerns and express what they want out of this government. And I think that's important no matter who's in charge. And so I hope we continue to have this conversation, and I hope we continue to just make sure what people want is said louder than the small minority here in Washington, D.C. that wants more foreign wars.
So did everybody catch that? Because basically what she did there, she was making sure that she wouldn't have to criticize Donald Trump. And it's true, like I said, there are neocons in both parties. Both parties have become warmongers. Like, we all know this. I've talked about this multiple times on the show. But she was making sure that she would not have to really criticize him specifically. And that's what Cenk was trying to get her to do. Let's go on to this next part here, which I also thought was pretty interesting. Check this out.
And about how we were going to take over Gaza, and we were going to own Gaza, and we were going to take care of the unexploded bombs for Israel in Gaza. I assume you're against all that?
Yes, I'm not supporting that. I'm not interested in taking over some part of the Middle East. I'm unapologetically American, and I can't repeat that message loud enough and over again. We've got people in Western North Carolina, East Tennessee, and Northeast Georgia that their homes have still not been rebuilt from Hurricane Helene. Look at over in California, Malibu, where many people's homes were destroyed from the wildfires. And we could name different parts of the country, Lahaina, Hawaii, and on and on. And before we go in and try to clean up anybody else's mess, or pay for reconstruction in any country, whether it's Gaza or Ukraine, and I don't think we should be doing that either. I think we should rebuild here in America and help Americans first.
Okay. So what is good about this is that she made it very clear she does not agree with the U.S. trying to take over Gaza and all that type of stuff. And then she brought the focus back to domestic. I really want people to pay attention to what is being done here. Really pay attention to this. Because what Marjorie Taylor Greene has learned how to do is she has learned how to take a message and reconnect it back to issues at home. You don't have to like her. I don't like her. She's not my cup of tea. But this is why she continues to win. She is connecting it back to the issues at home. So she mentioned Lahaina. She mentioned people in North Carolina that still don't have their homes rebuilt after the flood in Asheville, other places as well. So does everybody see that little that little pivot there that she did. So she said she was against what was happening there with the US trying to take over. She doesn't agree to that, but she made sure to put the focus back on why are we trying to rebuild some other entity when we have people here in the United States that lost their homes and haven't gotten them back. And that is why someone like her continues to win. This is something I think that Democrats are not the best on. Because people ask this question, they continue to say, why do people continue to vote for her? Because she continues to stand up and advocate for her constituents. She continues to bring it back to issues at home. But don't get excited, because there's another part coming up that I thought was very revealing. And he didn't push back on her about this. Let's continue.
All right, let's go to America and as these issues affect us here at home. So now people are getting snatched up off the streets. Mahmoud Halil, Öztürk, who wrote an op-ed against Israel or criticizing the current Israeli government, and now they're arrested and potentially deported. And they were here legally on visas or as on green cards. Seems to be a direct attack on freedom of speech. What's your stance on those arrests?
Well, I think freedom of speech extends to Americans. I haven't really been vocal on any of those issues. That's been more some of my other Republican colleagues that have been addressing those issues. I think being an American citizen is a pretty special privilege. But if you're here on a visa or a green card, then I think you should be respectful towards America and the people that we stand with. And so if they've done something wrong, then I have no problem with them being deported.
Pause. Did everybody catch it? So she's a big supporter of free speech. And what she's saying is that they're here on a visa or a green card. Basically, what she's saying is that those people should not have free speech. See, this is why, and I've said this before. Either you're free speech or you're not free speech. This whole like, I'm pro free speech, but wait a minute, you criticize Israel, no. Or I'm pro free speech, but wait a minute, you have a visa or a green card, no. Pay attention, because what I noticed is I saw some people cheering Marjorie Taylor Greene on because she was the one that put a stop to that bill, which we'll get to, a stop to that bill that was basically going to try to criminalize Americans boycotting like Israel and all that type of stuff, which is absolutely freaking ridiculous, right? But it was scary to me because I started to see people who are leftists and they were saying like, see, we need to, she's an ally for us and da-da-da. And I'm like, no, no, she's not. She's not. Let's continue.
Right. If it turns out that the reporting is accurate, and Öztürk as an example, the Turkish student up in Tufts, she just wrote an op-ed. Didn't do anything else, didn't say anything against America, just criticizing Israel and calling for an economic boycott. The Supreme Court has said that freedom of speech and our Constitution applies to everybody in the country, including resident aliens, that's legal aliens who have a green card, and people on visas. So it could corrode our freedom of speech if they're not allowed to criticize Israel. Does it bother you that it's just this one country that you're not allowed to criticize here in America, no matter what your status is?
Wait for it.
Well, I definitely stand for people's free speech. That is something that I'm on record doing, even speech that I disagree with. Let me tell you, probably a lot of people watching this show have said horrible speech against me. probably in my comments and all over social media, and probably on the show, you guys have probably said ugly speech against me. So but I still stand as a United States representative defending free speech, and I think I defend free speech probably more than most members of Congress, including many Democrats that you say a lot of nice things about. And I want to make sure that for the record, everyone knows that I single-handedly came out so hard against a boycott bill that was going to be brought to the floor on Monday because I thought it was a violation of free speech that I took it down. And it wasn't voted on this week. And because I believe Americans have the right to buy or boycott any product or country that they want. So I have a very strong record, as well as I've defended Julian Assange, Eric Snowden, and many others. So I believe our First Amendment and our free speech is incredibly important. I'm not familiar with this young lady's op-ed. I haven't read it, and I'm not familiar with the details of this story. So because I don't know all those details, it's hard for me to give you an exact opinion on this.
Yeah, I understand.
So very interesting. She's not familiar with the young woman from Tufts that we showed before on the show, who's being held right now. But what I want you to understand is when she's talking about free speech, she means for American citizens. She made it pretty clear on the show. She doesn't mean that for someone who has a visa or someone who is a green card holder. People have to understand this. And I saw people just take this and kind of run with it, right? Let's go to the next part. Because we have so much to discuss, guys.
A revolt in this case that blocked that bill in the Congress.
That was me. I came out first with my opposition to the bill, and I announced that I would be voting no to this boycott bill, because again, I believe Americans should be able to buy or boycott whatever product or country that they want to. Look what we did to Budweiser. We took Budweiser down, and that happened during the campaign, and that happened from MAGA, that happened from people on the right. So I believe in Americans' ability to be able to do things like that. But I don't lean into this. I think there's this movement that a lot of people are either they're for Israel or they're against Israel. I don't lean into any of that. I think Israel is a country that's doing just fine on their own. They have a great economy. They certainly don't have the amount of debt that we have. They have their own nuclear weapons, and they've already demonstrated they have a very capable military. We have voted a lot of votes, a lot of resolutions against anti-Semitism in Congress. But for me and my public statements on this issue is that I would like to see in the House of Representatives, we need to be doing more votes and focusing on the agenda that we campaigned for and the American people voted for in November of 2024. And I would like to see us putting our country before other countries. And that's not a for or against or any of that stuff. I just think we need to focus on what the campaign was about.
Yeah.
So notice here, she brings it up again that she was the one that brought that forward. And I want to go ahead and show you that, and we'll get back to the segment there. This part right here. So she was the one. Right-wing Republicans, not Democrats, killed the bill. I shall say no more. And see, people see this, and this is what I was saying. Rare right-wing revolt sinks bill punishing boycotts of Israel with prison. So what she was just referring to in that interview, she said she was the one who led the charge that said, hell no, we're not going to bring this bill forward because that is a problem for free speech, right? So that part there is important. However, what is strange to me is that the Democratic Party continues to allow the Republican Party to get ahead on said actions that really you should expect to come from the Democratic Party, right? Because it used to be the Democratic Party was the party that was for the working class. They cared about like free speech, etc. Wanted to really care for the people. And you would have expected a Democrat politician to say, no, 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 no. Let's lead the charge to kill this bill. But instead, you have Marjorie Taylor Greene that does it. So then what happens is, this is what I said before about that pendulum swinging from one side to the other side. Then what happens is, said like Democrat, voters that are upset with the Democratic Party, they start to look at Marjorie Taylor Greene and see her as a better option. And so instead of people taking a step back and saying both of these parties are corrupt, because they are, now they swing from one party to the other. So they swing from one side to the other, and the pendulum just keeps people going back and forth. And when that happens, people never break free of the duopoly and start something new or participate in something new. This part right here, when he asked her about Israel.
I think, I love our Jewish American brothers and sisters, and I think they're some of the best fighters for peace. And so to me, the issue of religion and the issue of a foreign government are completely separate. Do you agree with that?
Oh, of course. And you know what? Listen, I'm a Christian. My savior is a Jew, and that's Jesus. And so, look, I have no problem with Israel. I think they're doing great. They're a great country.
Right there. We can pause it right there. So for the people who started to get their hopes up throughout this segment, then you get to that part, and she said she has no problem with Israel. Israel is committing a genocide. Israel is bombing multiple countries at the same time. They've broke through Syria. They're bombing Syria. They're bombing Lebanon. They're bombing Yemen. They're bombing Gaza. They're bombing the West Bank. Israel is a problem. And this is the part that people needed to hear. She said she has no problem with Israel. So if you say you're anti-war, I'm done with these wars, I want to deal with these wars, but then you say you have no problem with Israel, who is bombing several countries in the Middle East right now, what does that mean to you guys? This was something that I noticed, and I called this out before. There were a number of people like Tulsi Gabbard who were against the war in Ukraine, and they spoke at these anti-war rallies. But the moment after October 7th, they turned into straight up war hawks and said, go after Hamas, give Israel whatever they need, get rid of the Islam, Tulsi especially. All of a sudden it changed. Once the country changes to Israel, all of a sudden it's okay to be for war. After everything that Israel has done and is still doing, how can you say you have no problem with Israel? Let's go on a little bit more.
As well as many other countries are. And criticism about anything is something. I have a pretty good reputation of criticizing things that I think are wrong. And, you referenced where I've been accused of anti-Semitism, but that was a headline and it was not the actual story. So you may have your facts wrong there on that. I'm not anti-Semitic. Not a single bone in my body is anti-Semitic. As a matter of fact, I think that one of the problems is in this country is constantly accusing people of all kinds of hate, whether it's anti-Semitism, racism, being homophobic, all of these things. I think that what we need to focus on is that we're all people, and making sure that we remember that humanity is something that's extremely important. And that's why we're having this chat tonight, is because we're both against all of these wars.
Let's go to the next part here. So that is one that she's spoken on multiple times. That's the part at the beginning. Yes, this part at the beginning, which I did skip. I saved it for last because it leads into the Piers Morgan segment with her on it. This is what she said at the beginning. Pay attention.
Having these conversations because the Trump administration is filled with neocons. If it wasn't filled with neocons, we wouldn't need this conversation. He said anti-war. You're very clear about that. You're super clear about that. I'm clear about it. But all of a sudden, we're having a conversation about how we might go to war. So how do you think the neocons got there, and how powerful do you think they are within the Trump administration?
Well, I would say they're powerful on both sides of the aisle, to be honest with you. We saw Democrats.
Okay, so that's a repeat of the earlier part. So I missed the question that Cenk asked at the beginning there, where he was asking her specifically about Trump's administration. Now, you saw the way that she responded to Cenk Uygur in that conversation. And don't forget, there was the moment when he asked about the protesters and the people who have been, are either have been deported or are waiting to be deported, right? This is night and day. I want you to see what she said to Piers Morgan about the protesters. And I think you're going to see a big difference. Watch this.
Because people like you, Marjorie, people like you said two things.
You mean like the pro-Hamas rioters?
No. I'm talking about January 6th.
Occupied our capital on October 18th. That Rashida Tlaib herself led.
Answer my question.
No, wait. We're in 2023, Piers.
Marjorie, answer my question.
We just had a pro-Hamas mob.
You've written a book in which you talk about these things.
Okay. And Rashida Tlaib.
Can I ask you a question?
Does everybody notice the difference? So when having this conversation with Piers Morgan, she called them the pro-Hamas rioters. Then she later on refers to them as the pro-Hamas mob. Why is it that when she had that conversation with Cenk Uygur, why didn't she refer to them as that? That's the question that I have. So which one is the real Marjorie Taylor Greene? Is it the Marjorie Taylor Greene that we saw here on Piers Morgan that called them rioters and mob? Is it the Marjorie Taylor Greene that we saw talking to Cenk Uygur saying that, well, this free speech is for those who are Americans, not if you're here on a visa or a green card? Or is it the Marjorie Taylor Greene that we saw a couple weeks ago kick people out of her town hall? If you're wondering if Marjorie Taylor Greene takes money from AIPAC, she does. It's very little when you compare it to the other ones. What I saw on Open Secrets was $2,000, so very, very small. But she does take money from AIPAC. So it's almost like she has her foot on the AIPAC side just a little bit, just enough so that they're probably not likely to come after her, but not as much as others so that she can still take a step back and say that she's anti-war. I really wonder, you guys, I just want people to know that we can have a better world. We can have a better country. We really can. And yeah, this was the right thing to do. When she decided to sink that bill that was going to punish boycotts of Israel with prison, that was the right thing to do. I'm not here to tell you that was wrong. Some people are. I saw some people, that are Democrat loyalists, and they're trying to say, "Oh, this is a bad thing." No, that's actually not a bad thing. That's a good thing. But because she seems to, I don't know. It's almost like she's trying to play both sides. Like she's saying she's anti-war, but she's still trying to protect Israel. Something to think about, folks. Something to think about. Corey, we can go to part 2 of Type VNC. Thank you. Okay. All right, let's go to some of the comments. Alexander says MTG is confused. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Shout out to KS, who just became a new member. Give KS a big whoop, whoop. Thank you, Wendy. Marjorie Taylor Greene is braver than AOC. However, every politician besides Massey is afraid to mention Israel. Interesting. Eric says, if it's a two-party problem, MTG, then why are you a member of one of them? And we can say that about a lot of people, right? Moo, MTG talking to Jink in such a calm manner is tripping me up. I don't think I've ever seen her like this before. I was surprised by that too. And maybe it's me, but I can see this version being on The View. They'd love her over there. Those women are a trip, huh? Thank you, Marlon. The people know the J's they stand with. Don't know what you mean by that, Marlon, but thank you. Thank you, Wendy. AOC is more afraid of Israel and free speech than MTG. When was the last time AOC went on TYT? Ooh, that's a good point. That is a good point. Damn. Thanks, Fuzzy Balls. Jink is a simp for the DNC. Fuzzy Balls. Oh, the name. Thank you, Sparky. MTG did give herself some wiggle room about non-citizen protesters by saying if they did anything wrong without saying exactly what the wrong was. Thanks, Wasim. She is afraid of AIPAC, so she is kissing BB buttocks. Thank you for this one as well. So Jewish space lasers cause forest fires was not her. Yeah, that was like a Facebook post or something, and she still says that wasn't her. Thank you, Marlon. What happened to the separation of church and state? The emperor has no clothes. Oh, I ask myself that question sometimes too. Thanks, Wasim. The Capitol was occupied by Jewish Voices for Peace. Yes, it was. Thanks, Sparky. People should realize Israel is not a real country. It was an outpost for the British Empire, and when the empire fell apart after World War II, it became a U.S. outpost. When Israel does evil, the U.S. is with them. Thanks, Miss Ritchie. MTG sees that Israel is way less popular with right-wingers now, so she's playing smart politics and being the based Republican. Interesting. So you think that's what she's doing. She's starting to see is not as popular. And thank you, Sparky. Anytime someone says Israel is our only friend in the Middle East, I can't help but think before Israel, we had no enemies in the Middle East. U.S. missionary John Sheehan. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, guys, go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you. And we're moving on to the next segment. Oh boy, this is a doozy, but we won't be here long. So I understand if this is something that you really just want to look at and say, holy crap. Believe it or not, Joe Biden is still in the atmosphere. And he just had his first interview after the Democrats lost in 2024. Interestingly enough, this interview was done by the BBC. Not by CNN, MSNBC, or any of the American networks. It had to be the British. Damn, they must have some good tea. Let's go ahead and get into this conversation. One of the things I can tell you that I noticed is that Joe Biden really has not learned a damn thing from the Democrats' loss in 2024. Check this out.
Smaller. And so imagine if we didn't have NATO now, what would be happening in the Mediterranean? What would be happening with regard to activity by Russia and China in the region? But NATO is the strongest alliance in the history of the world.
You say imagine. Can you imagine it now? Because there are some people who fear that this Atlantic alliance, born in the Second World War, is now dying before our very eyes. Is that your concern?
It's a grave concern. I think it would change the modern history of the world if that occurs.
So after everything, people protesting against the wars, people protesting against genocide in Gaza, after everything that has happened under Joe Biden's presidential term, he is still out here pushing NATO. And I am not pro NATO. If you've been watching me for a long time, you guys know that. But it's like he's not willing to read the room, right? NATO is the reason why you have the war with Russia and Ukraine. NATO, they're the ones that started all of this. And they started it because the US wanted them to. Go back to 2014. NATO is not a peacekeeping thing, right? So it's North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So it sounds nice, but NATO wants war. And NATO wants more war because war is profit for the military industrial complex. And what is happening, what he is concerned about, what's happening is that some of the other countries are starting to look in a different direction. Yeah, you have BRICS. You have countries like Russia, China, Brazil wanting to establish a multipolar world where there isn't this domination by the United States government. And they can kind of work together and do their own damn thing. Biden thinks that's a problem. It's just his concern is about the U.S. losing its dominance in the world. And when we talk about, and I really have to drive this home, guys, because I think this needs to be said. How can a party that continues to talk about, oppression and people not having a fair share, even though they don't deliver on those things, how can that same party think that it's okay for one country to oppress other countries? How can they think that's okay? Biden has learned nothing. Kamala Harris walked out on the stage with Liz Cheney, warmonger Liz Cheney. She expressed her excitement about getting an endorsement from neocon warmonger Dick Cheney, architect of the Iraq War. And they learned nothing.
Look, we are not the essential nation, but we're the only nation in a position to have the capacity to bring people together to lead the world. Otherwise, you're going to have China and the former Soviet Union, Russia, stepping up.
There it is. Ding, 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 ding. That's the problem, folks. He doesn't want China or Russia to take the lead. Meanwhile, China and Russia is trying to have a multipolar world. In other words, what it is starting to look like is that the US government doesn't want to play nice with others. Takes me back to the kindergarten days when teachers would write on the little progress report, smart does not play nice with others. And it's just crazy. And even if that were to happen, even if another country emerges as the leader, why is this an issue? That's the US for you. So he says that the US is the only country that can really lead the world. I say the US is the only country that has been destroying the world. If you call that leading, yikes.
And when I say inflection point, there's so much change taking place so rapidly that there needs to be an ability to respond rapidly. And I just think to myself, what would have happened in the Middle East, as bad as things are now, were there no NATO? Do you think Russia and China would have stayed out militarily?
Okay, so since he went there and he brought up the Middle East, notice he said as bad as it is now. It was also bad under you. A whole damn genocide started under you. Think about that for a second. What would happen if there were no NATO? I don't know, maybe no wars. Maybe leave these countries alone and let them take care of their own people. Maybe that kind of thing. I don't know. Don't ever forget this, that Joe Biden said if there wasn't an Israel in the Middle East, we would create one. And that's to protect U.S. interest. You see what I'm saying? So when somebody tells you that, that lets you know that all of those surrounding countries, if they didn't get on board with the U.S. agenda or the West agenda, the U.S. government was going to label them all as terrorists. And surprise, surprise, look what has happened. They don't want to get on board with our agenda. So we gotta put the memo out.
I don't, anyway.
At the center of NATO is this promise, isn't it? You called it in a speech I saw in Warsaw a few years ago, a sacred obligation, which is sacred. You defend each other. Do you think
attack on one is an attack on all?
Do you believe that obligation is still respected by Donald Trump?
Well, he doesn't say it is. And I think the rest of the world, I know one of the only advantages of being the old guy is that I've known every major world leader in the last 30 years, and I've known them personally. And I know all the major world leaders today. And I can tell you, the last meeting of the G7, the meeting of NATO 7, anyway, or the G20, which is a larger group. As we left the meeting, almost every world leader would pull me aside and say, we got to keep NATO. My democracy is at stake. Every generation has to fight to maintain democracy. Everyone's going to be challenged. And we've done it well for the last 80 years. And I'm worried that there's a loss of understanding of the consequence of that.
So I'm just going to break this down for you for just a second, because this code word of democracy that people like to use, a lot of the politicians like to use, I have to say this. When they say that we have to protect democracy, and now he's saying there's a breakdown of that, what they're really saying is U.S. dominance. So let's replace the word democracy with dominance. Because here's the thing. We have so-called democracy in the United States. We don't have true democracy, because when you have parties that pick who the nominee is going to be, like Joe Biden's party, that's not a true democracy. Okay. So it's not really about that. That's that little word that they use to replace dominance. That's really what they mean. Why do you think they say things like Israel's the only democracy in the Middle East, right? That is that's the ally for the United States interest. It's not that the U.S. government cares so much about the Israelis. I would say they don't. They care about the interests in that region, the resources. There's oil in that region. Let's not get that confused. It's not about democracy. It's about U.S. dominance. So the concern that he has is that the U.S. is losing their grip on that. And that was only going to happen in a matter of time anyway, because the U.S. empire is sinking. I used to say decline, but when I look at the numbers, it's sinking. It happens to every empire, you guys. They rise, they fall. It happened to Rome. You know, if you know the story about the Roman Empire, come on. They grew. Maybe they expanded a little too fast, some might say, but they grew, they rose, they became powerful, and then they fell. And for some reason, I think the U.S. government just seems to think that for whatever reason, that was never going to happen to this country. But history tells us that's not true. History tells us that every empire eventually falls. Let's get to the second part here.
Happen if the Trump administration says, look, that's the deal. You've got to give this territory up, at least temporarily. What is your fear of the consequence of that?
My fear of the consequence is that some of the NATO countries are going to decide that maybe, especially those along the border with Russia, may just say we got to make an accommodation.
Okay. So Donald Trump said that Crimea belongs to Russia, that Ukraine's going to have to do something there, whatever. Joe Biden is responding to that, and he's saying that, oh, no, if they give Russia Crimea, then my concern here is that the other nations, the other NATO nations along the border are going to feel like they have to accommodate Russia. So what? Okay, like, really? Those countries can decide to do what they think is best for their people. For their people. No other country comes over to the U.S. and tells us who we have to be in a coalition with. No other country comes here and tells us we can't do business with Canada. We can't hang out with Mexico. We can't do these things. It is the U.S. that tells other countries who they can be neighbors and friends with. It's a cult. And I don't understand why more countries don't push back on this. And I'm talking about more countries that are part of the West. One would think at some point the UK would stand up and say, I'm getting tired of being the stepchild of the US. Even Macron has made comments that I think Europe should not depend on the West and follow their lead all the time. Other people are starting to see this. So what? So what? We don't even live in Europe. Why do you care if these countries decide that they want to have a coalition with Russia? You know what this is really about? Russia has certain programs that take care of their people. China has certain programs that take care of their people. If you go back in history and you learn a little bit about McCarthyism, and they were like, oh, the Vietnam War, we got to do that because we got to stop communism. Got to do and all that type of stuff. They do not want that to spread. Hell, we're like one of the wealthiest countries in the world. They don't even want to give everybody healthcare in this country. The US government doesn't like these things. It's a problem for them. But why do you care if other countries in Europe are deciding to do business with other countries in Europe? Such a mess. Such a mess. So one thing I do agree with what Trump said is that Russia would have to keep Crimea. I agree with that. If Biden was still, and this is another thing, if Biden would have stayed in the race and would have won, which I don't think would have happened according to the data, but if that would have been possible, he literally would have said fight to the last Ukrainian as they did before. And Ukraine would be another devastated country. Ukraine already have devastation right now. They're losing people. But at what point does this end?
We got to make an accommodation. We got to give Russia more space. We got to go on. We have to yield to the pressures, whether they're economic, political, or military. And
so you see countries like Romania, for example, having a presidential election, choosing people who are Putin's friends.
I don't even want to say it. Yeah, worry about it.
What did you make of those scenes in the Oval Office? President Trump and President Zelensky.
I found it sort of beneath America, the way that took place.
No, it's not. It's not beneath America. What are you talking about? Think about all the things that have happened in this country. Are we serious? Are we serious? What? Beneath America? The same America that sent all those men to go die in the Vietnam War? That America? The same America of slavery, of Jim Crow? The same America that put Native Americans on reservations and said, have a casino and be happy? That America? The last part here is definitely, I would say he has some nerve. And this is one of those times I'm not even going to say audacity. He has some nerve to make this comment about young people, about the young people.
Young people are very frightened at the moment. I think possibly more frightened than any time I can remember in my lifetime. Are they right to be?
Right to be concerned. That's why they have to be involved. They have to be involved. They have to get engaged. They have to be part of the political process.
The young people have to be involved. They have to be engaged. They got to be a part of the political process. The same young people that were out in the streets by the thousands protesting, saying, stop the genocide. They weren't involved. They weren't engaged. The same young people that approached Kamala Harris and said, please let us speak on the stage at the DNC convention. The same young people that said, please stop killing my people. The same young people that said, all we ask of you is an arms embargo and a ceasefire. Those people weren't politically engaged. Did you not see all the young people on the floor at the DNC? They're not engaged. The same young people that came to your rallies and told you to stop killing them damn kids, those young people are not engaged. I would say I've never seen them more engaged except for the George Floyd protest. So I don't get this. I don't get it at all. So either you were asleep when they were in your face, or you're lying. What do you mean get more engaged? He means this part. Watch this.
They have to vote. They have to make sure they make their views known. And I think it's I think it may be also a wake-up call to that generation.
They have to vote. That's what it always comes down to. Why would these young people come out and vote for the party that was committing a genocide after they asked you for a ceasefire? And we learned from that report from Dropsite News that apparently the Biden administration, which includes Kamala Harris, never, ever told Israel to stop. Never pushed Israel for a ceasefire. Never. So I wanted you to hear that because I want you to realize something. Number one, the Democratic Party hasn't learned a damn thing. Number two, I will also say is that when they say that you need to be engaged and get involved, they're not talking about the same thing I'm talking about. When I say get engaged and get involved, I'm talking about organizing. I'm talking about whether it's protests, whether it's mutual aid, joining other organizations within your community. I'm talking about organizing. When they say get involved, they're talking about voting. They just want you to come out and vote. That's it. It's a hot mess. And that's all I got to say about that. Let's go to some of the comments here, folks. Thank you, Joseph. How many amphetamines did they have to pump into him to get him this coherent? That's a good question. Thank you, Anthony. Primary threat is our declining trade empire. Thanks, Wendy. Through all of Biden's incoherence and decline, at least he's keeping it real when it comes to wanting to maintain U.S. dominance all over the world. LOL. Thanks, Fuzzy Balls. Raphael Warnock has received $923K from the Israeli lobby, and he hasn't even been in the DNC that long. In comparison, Nancy Pelosi has received $617K. Yeah, I did a whole deep dive on Raphael Warnock. He really played people in Georgia. Thank you, Juanita. Reality Sabby, Biden is hell-bent on not trying to learn nothing. That's the mindset of a typical colonizing, Jim Crow, bigoted racist. Thanks, Anthony. Empire needs to pivot to our part of the world first. Thanks, Helpful Harm. Not U.S. dominance, Western European dominance. The U.S. is an older Israel, colonial outpost taking blame for the oldest money, mining, and weapon overlords. Thank you, Courtney. Well, it appears that Joe Biden was interviewed past his bedtime. Thanks, Marlon. Those methamphetamine are getting caught in his throat. U.S. policy, if you can't make it, take it by force. There you go. And thanks, Roger. Oh, shit. Look at the picture of Ibrahim and Maduro shaking hands. I heard about that. I heard about it. All right, guys, go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you. Quick announcement, and we'll move on. We got two more stories for you, and then we'll jump into call in. Saturday evening, ladies and gentlemen, I am joining a panel with the Green Party peeps here. Brianna Joy Gray, Jill Stein, and of course, Adam McKay. I'll mention all the other guests here. That is May 8th at 8 p.m. ET. You have to RSVP for this conversation, I believe, with former presidential candidate Dr. Jill Stein, myself, Adam McKay, Ron Paclone, Zakir Siddiqui, Patrick Dillon, Butch Ware, Bree, and Jason Call. So they'll send you a link when you register. Right now, I think it's like over 200 people. Yeah, a little bit of 200 people signed up. That is from 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. So, Eric, if you can put the link to this in the chat for people who want to join that discussion. It's called Dump the Duopoly, Demand Democracy. So I hope to see many of you there, folks. I know some people are asking what is next. So definitely come check it out. Yeah. This next story is a bit heavy, but I think it's important that we discuss it, and I need to present you two sides. The first side of the story that you're going to see is what happened. And you may see something on this show, image in particular, that was not revealed in corporate media. The next part of this segment is, what does the law say and what can you do about it if you live in Ohio? So if you have not heard about this story, the Ohio Dad Revenge, there is a father by the name of Rodney Hinton who killed a police officer. This is after a police officer killed his son. This is a big story right now, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go ahead and get into what happened with the father, and then I'm going to explain what happened with his son.
Tonight across Ohio, flags at half-staff in honor of fallen Hamilton County Sheriff's Deputy Larry Henderson.
He was so well-liked and so well-known. We could fill this building with the law enforcement agencies that respect him, love him.
The recently retired 33-year veteran was working traffic patrol Friday afternoon.
I've got an officer now.
When police say he was intentionally struck by the father of a teen fatally shot the day before by an officer from a different department. Henderson later dying at the hospital.
There is a connection between these two incidents.
38-year-old Rodney Hinton Jr. is now behind bars and charged with aggravated murder. Court documents say the defendant drove across oncoming lanes of traffic through the intersection and directly at the deputy, who was wearing a fluorescent vest.
There are no evidence of skid marks. There are no evidence that you tried to avoid him.
In court, Hinton's public
This part right here, a lot of people are talking about how when he walked by, he looked the police officers right in the eye. And again, I have to say this because you know how YouTube can be. Sabby Sabs podcast does not condone violence. Made that very clear once again for YouTube, FYI. But notice how he seems to have no fear, right? Let's continue.
In court, Hinton's public defender calling this an emotionally charged situation. The crash happening less than 3 hours after his family says Hinton met with Cincinnati police to review body camera videos showing the shooting of his 18-year-old son, Ryan Hinton. The videos, now publicly released, show Hinton running and being shot by city police. Cincinnati police say the teen was armed and pointed a gun toward an officer who...
Pause. Hold on to that part. The teenager pointed a gun towards the officer. That part right there is going to be important.
Who was responding to a call of a stolen vehicle.
He's got a gun. He's got a gun.
Yeah, that's when he says he's got a gun. And you can see here's one of them running here. Here's an officer over here. Let me make sure because I don't want to show. Okay.
You're right, on your right.
Hinton was shot about 6 seconds after officers get out of their vehicles.
Good.
Pause right here. Okay. Everyone look at this image right here. So you can see here's the son right here. And it looks like he came through, but in between the dumpsters, right? All right, there's the sun right there. Now I paused right here to show you that image because that's the image that everybody keeps showing. But I have another image that's going to show you exactly where he got shot. Because what people don't understand, he was not shot right here. So everyone hold on to that. Now in this shot, and it is a little blurry, in this shot, I did not see a gun. But they also said when he was running, he dropped the gun. So I didn't see a gun here. But what does the law say? Let's come out for a little bit here. We're just going to fast forward. All right, and let's go ahead and bring this part back in.
He wasn't. He was scared. He tripped and fell. He must have been so scared. I'm so sorry, Ron.
We are very close family. This is killing us.
Tonight, the teen's family speaking out with their family attorneys who say they're investigating the shooting.
I'm angry because it shouldn't have never happened. I want to find out exactly what steps was taken in the protocol.
While also offering their condolences to the deputy they say was tragically killed.
In that statement, you made a point to notice and acknowledge the pain that the family of the fallen deputy is feeling as well. What was in your heart when you did that? Why did you find the need?
I was crying about what happened to the innocent officer, so that's all it's all about. It's all about healing each other.
And Shaquille Brewster joins us now from Cincinnati, Ohio. Shaq, the father in this case, Rodney Hinton Jr., is expected back in court tomorrow.
That's right, Ellison. We expect to see that suspect back in court tomorrow morning for a bond hearing. The state is essentially asking that he be held behind bars until his trial. We should note he has not entered into any plea just yet, and we're not expecting that to take place tomorrow. By the way, the funeral arrangements for neither his son nor the deputy that he's accused of killing have been set yet, though we're expecting that deputy's funeral to take place later this week, Ellison.
Okay, so I don't want people to get confused. I want to make this very clear. The officer that the father killed is not the officer that killed his son. So I just want to make that very clear so people aren't confused as to what is going on. But we want to look at this timeline a little bit here so we can see how these events actually played out with Ryan, who is the son. Okay, so we're going through the timeline of the events. On May 1st, a Cincinnati police officer fired multiple shots, 2 of which hit and killed 18-year-old Ryan Hinton. Cincinnati Police Department Lieutenant Jonathan Cunningham sent out messages to media about the shooting. Right? So let's jump forward here. Cincinnati Police Chief Teresa held a press conference in the parking lot at the media staging area. So we'll show you something from the press conference in just a second. So during the press conference, this is what was said. Police approached the vehicle. Now, from what I understand, they said the vehicle was stolen. Okay, so it says that the fugitive apprehension squad, along with other uniformed officers, became aware of a stolen vehicle at the apartment complex on Warsaw. I'm going to pause there for a second. So far, I haven't seen any proof, any evidence provided that that vehicle was stolen. So I can't honestly say if it was or wasn't. Even if it was, I don't think that matters when you see the picture that I'm about to show you, when you see where he was actually shot. Going forward here, it says that when police approached the vehicle, 4 people ran from it. So there was 4 people. She said at least one of them was armed with a gun. Police chased the people who ran from the vehicle. Teresa goes on to say that one CPD officer discharged their weapon towards the person who had a gun, hitting and killing them. Teresa also said 2 of the other alleged suspects in the vehicle were arrested and 1 remained at large. So here's another thing. There are witnesses. This is part of the story some people have not mentioned, that the other people who were in the car, 2 of them were arrested. So possibly 1 or maybe both of them saw what happened. I want to bring up another thing. I said, I don't know for sure if the car was stolen. I haven't seen any evidence presented to prove that. So there's that. 2, just because someone had a gun, how do you know they didn't have a permit to carry? How do you know they weren't a gun owner? These are all things to think about. Okay, let's go on here. Arrested that day were 19-year-old DeAnthony Bullocks and 18-year-old Jarrell Austin. Both are charged with receiving stolen property and obstructing official business. Around 7 p.m., Cincinnati police sent a press release to the media saying that they would hold a press conference following day at 11 a.m. to discuss more about the case. Now, this part here you need to hear as well. The family, which included his father at that time, saw the body cam footage. What we saw was disturbing. According to the prosecutors, Rodney Hinton Jr. left the police station after watching the video. So he did see the body cam footage. Rodney left the police station with other family members, left his vehicle in the parking lot of the police station. Just after 11 a.m., Teresa held the press conference showing clips of the body camera footage from the shooting that killed Ryan. The body camera footage was blurry and short. Just 6 seconds elapsed between when the suspects jumped from the vehicle and when the officer fired at Ryan. Clips and still images from officer body cameras show the people who were in the car scattered when police pulled in and trapped the suspect's stolen vehicle with their cruisers. Okay. Teresa said that officers saw Ryan carrying a gun. Officers interviewed as part of the investigation into the shooting said they heard the metal of the gun hit the ground when he fell. Okay. Ryan got back up and ran between the 2 dumpsters. An officer was already on the other side of the dumpsters with their gun drawn. Teresa said another officer involved in the chase alerted the officer who fired his gun that Ryan was armed. That's the officer on the video where you can hear him say, he's got a gun, he's got a gun. Here's the interesting part. The officer who fired the shots can be heard saying gun before multiple gunshots rang out. As shots are being fired, Ryan appears to run into a short chain link fence and fall forward over it. Teresa said officials believe the officer fired roughly 4 to 5 shots. Ryan was hit by 2 of those bullets. Teresa said he was in the chest with the bullet exiting his back and once in the arm, but the bullet went through his arm and into his side. Okay. Let's get into this press conference. I want to show you the video that they showed. This gentleman captured this. He did a really good job capturing this, right? This video that they show during the press conference is the blurry video, but we have some images to show you exactly where he was hit. Listen to this. This guy, again, his name is Richard Taylor. A shout out to him because he was able to capture the clear video.
This individual gets up, still has a firearm in his hand, and continues to run through the dumpsters.
All right, so you actually now, you see how clear that picture is a little clearer, but it's still blurry. Look how clear that picture is, but it's still blurry. And here's a still shot of that picture. Now you see how clear those trash cans are as opposed to these pictures right here. You see how blurry that one is?
Now that's because in the body cam footage, the officer and I saw the full video. I can't show the full thing on here, obviously, but I saw the full video. When the officer started running, the body camera's bouncing up and down. That's why the video is blurry.
And you see how clear that is, right? blurry, clear. Let's go back to the video because I'm gonna show y'all something.
So these are some still photos. This is the officer who originally saw him with the firearm in his hand.
Now you see that picture right there. That is a still shot, right? That is still. You look at the trees in the background. They are much blurrier than that last photo.
Hand, calling it out. He runs through the dumpsters.
And right there, you see what they did right there? Look at the background of the trees. It's much blurrier. It's much blurrier than this. And also what they did was hide his body position. So this is the point where they're going to claim that he pointed the gun at the officer.
This officer knows that there's another officer here that is going to ultimately encounter him when he comes through the dumpsters. So he makes him aware of that. He shouts out to him, on your right, on your right. He's on your right. And that's where this individual comes out from between the dumpsters. This is the other officer, the one who fires the shot. This is his body camera as he approaches the scene.
And that part, I can't show too much of that because that's the actual thing, right? Okay. So let me show you a close-up. Make sure we get this just right. Here we go.
This image right here. That is the last image that they showed you. But this is actually where the shooting happened. This is a never before seen photo.
Right there. So this is the image that people need to see. Now here, as you can see, you see the smoke from the gun right here? So there's the smoke and Ryan is right there. So remember the report that I just read to you, it said he ran into a chain link fence. There is no chain link fence right here next to the dumpster. So you know that when they shot him, if the report said when he was shot, he kind of fell into a chain link fence, there's no chain link fence next to that dumpster, which means he was not shot when he was in between the dumpsters. This is the point that I was trying to get across to people. He was shot here. And in this image, as you can see, his back is turned. That's not the front. That's not the side. That is the back. And you can see the smoke here, which means he was shot from behind. If his back is turned and he was shot from behind, how is he also pointing a gun? And where is the gun? They said the gun, they heard it fall, hit the ground when he fell, right? Okay, is what it is. And by the way, I'm not here to say he did not have a gun. I have no evidence that shows he didn't. So I'm not here to say that. But what I am here to say is the report that I just read to you said when he was shot, he fell into a chain link fence. Okay, again, that means he was not shot between those two dumpsters. He's shot right here, as you can see the smoke, and his back was turned. In fact, if you want to see the actual, we have a close-up on the image here, because I shared this on Twitter to show people that the picture that they were showing you that was going around, notice they didn't show you where the smoke, when the smoke was coming from the gun. This is the part that's important for people to see. He was not shot. I'm going to say this again. He was not shot in between those dumpsters. He was shot when he exited those dumpsters right here. His back is turned. Now that we know that, You need to know that that is probably the same thing that the family saw. When the family saw the body cam footage, the response in the report was, they said they just don't understand how. They said it was problematic, right? Disturbing. What we saw was disturbing because this is what they saw. After his father saw this, I believe his father snapped. Some people are asking, can his father's crime be considered a crime of passion? I'm wondering if maybe his lawyer would try to go for a temporary insanity plea. This is what people are asking. Imagine if that was your kid. By the way, we don't know. Let's say the vehicle was stolen. We don't know if Ryan stole that vehicle. We don't know that. For all we know, his friends could have picked him up and he got in the car. We don't know if he was involved at all. This could have been one of those cases of wrong time, wrong place, because, and we've seen this happen before, where people have been in the store with their friends and one of their friends decides to shoplift and the security guard catches them and all of them get arrested, even though they weren't stealing, but their friend was. So we do not know if Ryan stole this car at all. And I'm seeing a number of people on social media who are saying his son stole a car and he's a thug, he's a criminal. None of these other people are mentioning that there were other people in that car. We don't know if Ryan was driving that car or if he was a passenger. But what we do know now is that he was shot from behind. And then there's this part, because now we got to go into the part that's not going to make people happy, and that's the law. What does the law say? We're looking at two different sources. We're going to look at the Police Brutality Center, and we're going to look at what a law firm has to say. Can police shoot a fleeing suspect? This is the part people need to pay attention to. Make this a little bit bigger. In most cases, the answer is no, unless it is a last resort to prevent imminent danger. It is generally unlawful for a police officer to shoot someone in the back, particularly if they are nonviolent and unarmed. However, the police are saying that he had a gun. So if he had a gun, if that is correct, and he had that gun, then he was not unarmed. This is the part of the law that people need to know about, because this was a shock to me too. I did not know this. I've said for years, if they're running away from you, they are not a threat. If they were running towards you, absolutely, they're a threat to you. But if they're running away from you, they're no longer a threat. The law says if they are unarmed and they are fleeing, not a threat. But if they are deemed to be imminent danger, which if you are armed, you are, and you may not necessarily be an imminent danger to the police, but you would be considered imminent danger to the public. And this is what I think the police are trying to go with. This is very important for people to see this law. And I'm trying to tell everybody, please, please, please educate your friends, your families. Please tell them about this, because a number of times I've heard people say if they're running away, the police can't shoot. This is not true. The law does not say that. If you are armed, you are considered imminent danger. Now, this is from the Police Brutality Center. Now I'm going to show you what the law firm says. Morgan & Morgan. Here we go. Can a cop shoot someone in the back? Police officers are trained to shoot fleeing persons only as a last resort if there is imminent danger. Uh-oh, there's that word again. Shooting someone in the back is generally, unlawful, especially if they are unarmed and non-violent. While some officials say a cop can shoot someone in the back in some circumstances, victims and their families could bring legal claims if using deadly force was unjustified. Let's highlight unjustified. So you saw two different ones here, the Police Brutality Center and Morgan & Morgan law firm. And both of them are saying that if it is imminent danger, which if you are armed, it is, by law, they can. For those of you that have kids, please have this conversation with your children. Please have this conversation with your kids. The same way you had the conversation with the kids about what to do if they're pulled over by the police and where to keep their hands on the wheel. I know my dad had that conversation with me a long time ago. Please have this conversation with your kids. And I hear you. Angie said, this is some bullshit. I know, but that's the law. Now, I thought it was interesting that this happened in Ohio, because there's something coming up in Ohio that I think people should see, because I don't like to leave people with just, this is it, and there's nothing that you can do about it. You need to know what you can do about it. This is coming up in Ohio, eliminating qualified immunity for public workers, one step closer to going before the voters. So if you live in Ohio, heads up, a proposed constitutional amendment that would remove qualified immunity protection for public employees, including police and firefighters, has now been approved to become a single ballot issue if it makes it before Ohio voters. This is very important. This is why I tell you, don't stay at home. You do not want to miss these ballot measures. Now, me and friend of the show, Roger Meadows, we knew this was coming up because friend of the show who's been on the show, Cynthia Brown, came on to discuss the Ohio Coalition to End Qualified Immunity. She was on the show before, and they have been working on this for years to end qualified immunity in Ohio. So if you live in Ohio, I just want to let you know there is something you can do. And from what I understand, this end qualified immunity question looks like it probably is going to be on the ballot this year, 2025. So I don't like to leave you with, oh my God, I know the theme is holy crap, and holy crap is right. But do not sleep on that constitutional amendment, which is going to be on the ballot. A lot of people don't know about it because it's not a presidential year. And a lot of times people don't come out to vote during those off seasons. You should still go out and vote for these ballot measures during the off seasons. So that's important. Eric, can you share that with people in the chat when you get a chance to end the Ohio Coalition for Ending Qualified Immunity? And one last word here from the father. And you tell me if you think Rodney Hinton had temporary insanity. Check this out.
We're now getting a closer look at how deputies from Claremont County interacted with Rodney Hinton Jr. You see the video playing out behind me. This is the man accused of killing Deputy Henderson after he was released from the hospital, booked into jail, and later taken to court. WCPO 9 News reporter Sean Delancey breaks down the body cam footage.
Officers and deputies enter a Cincinnati police holding cell where Rodney Hinton Jr. is sleeping.
Wake up. Wake up.
Still in his hospital gown, Claremont County deputies called to bring Hinton to their jail in Batavia, shackle the man accused of killing Hamilton County Sheriff's Deputy Larry Henderson just hours earlier.
Are you going to stand on your own?
Deputies take Hinton to the Claremont County Jail,
Oh, we're going to get this door over here.
where another deputy ran him through a series of questions about his mental and physical state.
I'm going to ask you some questions. Do you have a serious medical or mental health issue that needs immediate attention? Is that a yes or a no? Have you recently considered attempted suicide? No. You want to hurt yourself or anybody else? No.
In court Tuesday, Hinton's defense attorney requested a mental competency evaluation for him. The attorney argued that Hinton was mentally ill at the time. Police say he hit and killed Deputy Larry Henderson with his car.
I want to make certain that this young man is treated as a mentally ill person and not as a cop killer.
An official.
So that's the question. And I have that question for the audience too. I should have created a poll for this. Do you think that he could get temporary insanity plea? That's what his lawyers are trying to push here, right? Now I got to say this. When the Luigi Mangione incident happened, and Luigi is alleged, we're still saying alleged, right? I remember warning people that if things don't change within the system, eventually what will happen is that people will take matters into their own hands. And I've said before, I do not advocate for violence on this show. But Luigi Mangione, I believe, was just the iceberg. Allegedly, Luigi. That's just the iceberg. When you see that we are living in a country that's known as this empire, and the empire is sinking and it's falling apart, I would say falling into the abyss, I warn you that people would become more dire. There has been so much injustice in the systems that we have in this country. With Luigi Mangione, it's the healthcare system. With Rodney Hinton, it's the criminal justice policing and the criminal justice system. We have multiple systems in this country. They operate in different ways, but they all seem to benefit those at the top. And I told you that it was only a matter of time before people realize if these systems are not working for us the way that they're supposed to, that some people would take matter into their own hands. And I think that's what you're seeing happen. I don't know what's going to happen to Rodney Hinton, but it looks like they're trying to go for a temporary insanity plea. But I know one damn thing. This image says a lot of words. I don't see a gun. I see a back that's turned. And I'm also wondering if the gun hit the ground when he fell. How do we even know for sure that he picked it back up? He wasn't the only one in the car. Don't forget that. There were others in the car with him. And who knows, maybe we'll hear from them. Who knows? But holy crap, folks. Holy crap. Let's go to some of the comments here in the chat and we'll get to the final story. Corey, can you go ahead and go to the next part of Type VNC? Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, VS Need. Sabby, don't you know that this is the USI, the United States of Israel now? Thank you, Rot. The left-right paradigm is the oldest trick in the book, divide and conquer, to make you feel empowered, when in reality, it's just a dog and pony show. Okay. And I think I have to leave those for Eric because I know we're going to do call-in. So I'll do those two. And then Eric can get to the other ones after the after this last segment. Okay. Okay. Oh boy. MARC Lamont Hill has been on Piers Morgan's show for quite some time. I mean, it's not like it's his first time appearing on his show. But I saw Piers Morgan do something in this recent panel with Marc Lamont Hill that I felt was a new low. It leads some of us to wondering if this show is not necessarily just a debate format anymore, but if this show's main goal is to ignite a fire in people and to piss people off. If the Piers Morgan show has basically become the Jerry Springer for politics. You see, one thing about this show in particular is that it has become very popular, Piers Morgan show, and it's because of the feuds that happen on the show back and forth between people, between the guests. But one of the things that I've noticed is that it's almost gotten to the point now where it seems like in order to continue the viewership and the excitement, there has to be something controversial or some outrageous statement or remark that a panelist makes on the show. I think it's gotten to the point now where the show relies on that. So if the panelists aren't making it enough outrageous and over the top, Piers can add to that. And he definitely did in this conversation with Marc Lamont Hill. Let's get into it. We're going to start with this part here.
Here's the thing. White people have been under attack for years. It's been systematic racism. As much as Black people and people of color want to talk about systematic racism in the United States, it's quite the opposite. They get preferential treatment when it comes to getting a job, when it comes to getting into colleges. White people.
Pause. So this woman, I guess, identified on the show as a racist. So first of all, she's already wrong. Black people do not receive preferential treatment when it comes to getting jobs. White women do. When you look at minorities, when it comes to employment, white women benefit from that more because white women, like this woman right here, is also a minority. Already wrong. Okay, so this woman is benefiting from the same system that she is complaining about Black people benefiting from, and she benefits from it more than I do because she's a white woman. She's ahead of me. Then she brings up the college thing. Oh, they get special preferential treatment when it comes to college. No. Don't forget, it was just a couple years ago I covered this, that the Supreme Court outlawed affirmative action for college admissions. What is she talking about? Let's continue.
People, on the other hand, have been getting attacked relentlessly. Look at 2016 and BLM and all the riots. We just had to sit back and watch people burn down our cities and do nothing about it. So the way to fight back against essentially this anti-white hatred that's been systemically, ingrained in U.S. society.
She has no idea what she's talking about. I got to add something here too, because I don't think a lot of people realize this as well. Notice how she said our cities. White people's cities. As if nobody else lives in those cities but white people. Do you see how she's trying to take the ownership of the cities? She doesn't even know what systemic means. Okay? How are you having issues, or how are you targeted with systemic issues when you are not at the bottom of the ladder, Miss Ma'am? I went through a whole study about this before. On this show, we did a deep dive into Gloria Steinem, and I explained it very clear to you guys that the feminist movement hurt the civil rights movement for Black people. Yes, it did, because it included white women as a minority. This woman benefited from the minority system. Let's go on.
Is with white unity. We don't see white unity on.
Hang on. Okay, but hang on. Sorry, just to be clear, this has got nothing to do with anything you've just said. This is a disgusting racist woman who repeatedly spews the M-word, first at a young child and then at the person taking the video of her, does it with complete impunity, does it numerous times. We are talking about a bona fide, unquestionable racist. So I don't understand why what you've just said to me bears any relation to white unity or anything that you've just said. She's just a racist. Isn't she? You wouldn't dispute that.
It's not about her. It's not about her. It's about
it is about her
coming together and supporting another white person. And it doesn't matter.
Why would you want to support a white racist?
Because I want to support free speech, and you cannot have free speech in the country.
No, that's fine. You can support free speech, but you also have to be accountable for what you say. She is. I mean, would you use the N-word out of interest?
Yes.
You would.
Mm-hmm. I do quite frequently.
You use the M-word quite frequently. Well, why? Other than the fact you're a despicable racist, are you?
Some would say I am. I guess according to the ADL, I'm a white supremacist. I'm a neo-Nazi.
Yeah. Well, if you use the M-word repeatedly, you are a racist. Then are you?
Sure, I'll embrace that. If that means forwarding, helping white people achieve freedom of speech, real freedom of speech, which, by the way, Shiloh Hendricks is being attacked on all fronts. They're trying to bring legal charges against her. They're trying to get her children taken away. So you were saying Carmelo Anthony, it doesn't matter. That's a different.
Sorry, but just to be
thing.
clear, you just said to me you use the N-word regularly. In what context? Do you use it with black people?
Yes, if it's appropriate.
When would it be appropriate to use the N-word? When would it be appropriate?
Anytime I feel like it.
So you're an unashamed racist.
Correct.
Well, do you understand that makes you a despicable human being?
I guess so. I don't really care. I mean, why are we not talking about Shiloh Hendricks? Why are we talking about?
Well, actually, I think you've moved it on in this debate very quickly to your own racism, which explains why you've supported her in public and why you've got all these views.
Yeah, the conversation wasn't even about systemic racism. The conversation was about the GoFundMe for Shiloh Hendricks versus the GoFundMe for Carmelo. And that's what the conversation was about. She took it there, though.
See no problem with a woman shrieking the N-word repeatedly because you yourself are a despicable racist. And you've just proudly admitted that with a smug grin on your face, which is pretty horrifying, actually, for most people to have to watch. And shame on you. You're entitled to do it, and I'm entitled to call you despicable.
Well, shame on white people for allowing themselves to be systematically discriminated against in the United States. This is our country. This is a country that should be.
What do you mean your country?
So here we go. See what I was saying when she said our cities and our country? White women being discriminated against? Honey, you're a minority. You're a minority too. Who benefited from DEI? White women, not black men, not black women, white women at the top. They are at the top. They benefited the most from DEI. Now, she don't want to say that. And honestly, I don't think she's smart enough or intelligent enough to know that. But even if you put the numbers in front of her, she wouldn't want to admit it because it would crush her whole argument.
Because I'm white and my
there are no black people in American history. Is that what you're saying? That they've all just landed in America, invading your white country? Is that your position?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, they were brought here technically.
My God, do you understand how dumb you sound?
This is stupid. This is stupid and racist. And at some point, we have to ask ourselves, do we want to reward this kind of disgusting behavior by platforming it?
I don't disagree, Mark. Listen, I didn't know she was going to say that. I don't disagree with you.
No. Yeah.
But let me pause here. Yeah, you didn't know that she was going to say that. But there have been a number of times that Piers Morgan has brought people on that show that have said some pretty nasty and racist and disgusting things about Palestinians. And maybe the first time they came on, he didn't know they were going to say that, but he continued to bring them on. Rabbi Shmuley, Alan Dershowitz, so come on. You bring them on because you want the controversy, because you want the views, you want the excitement, you're just as much a part of this. This is why I said, it's kind of become like the Jerry Springer of political media, because it's at first in the beginning, it was about debates and people were debating having some serious like back and forth. But then it kind of became known for who can make the most outlandish comments, and he can put it in the title, and everybody's like, oh, let's make it go viral or whatever. And it's just, so you're a part of it. Like, don't pretend like you have nothing to do with it. That's what the show is. That's what the show has become. This isn't even the worst of it, though. Where do you see what he says at the end?
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think you knew ahead of time. I'm saying at this moment, someone who's saying technically black people brought up. No, technically Africans were stolen, enslaved, and they built this country. And the idea that you can justify calling a baby the N-word by saying that white people are losing the country is absurd. It's morally bankrupt, and it's honestly besides the point. I mean, all these are just distractions from the fact that she wants to justify dehumanizing and even animalizing a small black child. It's disgusting.
What is it?
Yeah, I never said that. I never said that.
No, you may as well have done, because you're just an unashamed.
That's the implication of your
racist. Let me bring in Myron Gains, because you've been smirking and laughing. What's
okay? Now we're gonna go to the Myron Gains part, right? Now let me tell you something about this guy, okay? This guy, Myron Gains, guy right here in between Piers and MARC LAMONT Hill. He is a part of this podcast called Fresh and Fit. It was part of like that manosphere, that type of thing. But he also spends a lot of time hating on Black Americans, calling us monkeys, all types of names, not just on his show, but also in Twitter Spaces, which I have seen myself. He is very, very, very nasty towards Black Americans. He says he's Sudanese. He says he's from Sudan. Some people said that he's actually Indian. I don't know, but I know he's not a Black American. And he has found a way to make money off of being a part of the African diaspora and shitting on Black Americans. It's outrage porn, basically. Is what he's doing. So who do you think he's going to side with here? Let's bring it in.
Well, I mean, I find it interesting that you guys want to virtue signal and, wag the finger and say she's a racist and everything else like this.
No, she admits she's a racist.
Well, let me
I'm not wagging a finger at anybody.
She's self-identified as a racist.
But Myron, with respect, Myron, I don't need to wag a finger when somebody says, yeah, I'm racist. I use the N-word against Black people. I don't care. That's a racist. I'm not wagging any finger. I'm not accusing anybody. She is admitting it proudly. Even you can't defend that, surely.
Everybody is racist to some degree. The reality is it depends on, a lot of people want to be politically correct. A lot of people want to sit there and say, I'm not racist at all. We all have biases. We all have stereotypes. We all make jokes. We all are racist to some degree. Now, how racist you are is a whole other situation, but everyone is racist. That's number one. Next thing I want to say, see, I think this Shiloh, Hendrickson, Metcalf situation is a microcosm of a much bigger problem. And that bigger problem is what I call systemic organization. And what I mean by this is for decades, we've had Black people literally running around with Black supremacy, committing crimes, not getting accountability for their actions, and then they blame.
So do you see what he does? This guy is basically, and by the way, for a while, he was lying, I guess, trying to pretend that he was a Black American. Black Americans, like, we know he not. Come on. Right? But you see what he's doing? He feeds right into the same white supremacist talking points. I don't know how Mark sat through this.
In the system for it. For example, George Floyd, criminal. Ferguson, criminals. Freddie Gray, criminal. A lot of these people are criminals, and what ends up happening is they challenge the police officer, they get into a physical altercation, things go left, they die, something happens, use of force is utilized, and then they want to cry about the result. When in reality, it's not the police killing Black people, it's Black people killing Black people. And if you want to talk about Black on white violence, Black people kill white people 2 times as much. And on top of that, most of the shootings in America, a lot of the times, are white cops killing other unarmed white men.
So do you see the white supremacist talking points that he has? He is here defending this woman who said she was a racist, who doesn't give 2 craps about him, because that's what he's paid to do. His whole spiel, it's an act. This guy has been outed in Twitter Spaces so many times by other people like Tariq Nasheed and all of them. They've exposed this guy over and over again. So This is a problem. This is a problem. And when people ask, well, why is it that all of us can't come together from the diaspora? I would say Black Americans have tried to do that over the years, but Myron Gains isn't alone. He's not the only person out there talking this way. He's the one that's saying it publicly on camera. Others have said it as well. Now, does that mean everybody's like that? No, it doesn't. But what I'm saying is this guy makes money by doing that. He is willing to throw other people that are a part of that diaspora under the bus for a check. That's not an ally. That's an opportunist. Let's go on a little bit more.
So this whole systemic racism or police brutality or, oh, it's all so messed up. The reality is this. Black people have been able to get away with a ridiculous amount of privilege in America for a very long time. They're able to be racist with impunity. They're able to call white people crackers without being challenged back. And quite frankly, white America's had enough of it, and the chickens have come to roost. Now,
pause. First of all, Black people are not privileged because Black people as a group are not in power. We have no power in this country as a group of people. We don't. So there's that. You see where he's going with this? Two, regardless of how Black you are, if you were to sit up there and call it, I know for a fact for me, if anybody at my previous employers would have called a white person that word, they would have been fired. So for him to sit up here and say, no, there's no accountability, no repercussions, that is a lie. Wait till we get to the Mark part.
Look, am I saying that's awesome? Am I saying that's great? No, but for literally the better part of almost 2 decades since the Obama era, we've had to have BLM and liberalism shoved down our throats. And quite frankly, we're all tired of it.
Right. But just to be clear, you would have no problem with one member of this panel openly saying she uses the M word at Black people with impunity and is proud of being a racist. You have no problem with that.
My worldview on the protection of the First Amendment and freedom of speech overrides my personal feelings. She has the right to say
That's fine. You can support the First Amendment, but you can also have a personal view about what she said.
My feelings are irrelevant. The Constitution is the Constitution. That's what matters.
Oh, that's fascinating. Hold on. So when it comes to chastising Black Americans about their behavior, about calling white people crackers, as you say, about their moral claims about the racist system, you can levy a judgment against Black Americans for all the things they do. But when it comes to this woman saying the N-word and this other woman endorsing it and saying that she herself uses the N-word, now all of a sudden we can only talk about the Constitution and the legal right. We can't offer any moral judgment against it. That's disingenuous. And it's as the only Black American up here, that's quite frustrating to hear.
Here's the thing. If you want to be soft and get offended by that, that's your fucking problem, not mine.
Let me ask Ricky.
This isn't about
Ricky.
This isn't about being soft any more than when you were desperately saving these white people.
Hold on. This sensitive nature that you have is precisely why we have this problem.
It's not about being sensitive. It's about I didn't articulate. Hold on. Let me finish, Myron. Let me speak and then I'll let you respond. Myron, sure. I didn't articulate any sensitivity here. What I said, in the same way that you levied a judgment against Black people, I'm levying one against the claims you're making. I'm no more sensitive than you were when you made your claim. I'm simply saying I disagree with you. And to immediately jump to you're being sensitive is just a distraction. I'm making an argument here. Just respond to my argument.
If you're struggling with,
we'll pause that part right there. So notice MARC Lamont Hill, he came in there and was like, no. And I gotta say something as we go to this last part. You know, I remember when I was on MARC Lamont Hill's show and he brought up the part about Kamala Harris, people saying that she's not Black and And I explained to him, this is before the election, I explained to him when people say that, they're saying she's not a Black American. And he's like, but she is Black and And I said, Mark, you have to understand that other groups in this country do delineate, right? And so you can't sit up there and call someone who's Korean Chinese. They'll correct you and say that they're not, Chinese, etc. Other groups do this all the time. And there does need to be that same grace spared to those who are Black Americans. And what I noticed from this conversation, and I think Mark covered this on his channel as well, is that one of the things that he brings up is about Myron Gains. He's like, well, notice Mark said there, he said, I'm the only Black American on this panel. This is what I was trying to explain. So I think it's great that he sees that now, but this is exactly the point that I was trying to get across. Myron Gains here made it very, very clear that he is not us. He made it very clear that we are a problem. And he's continued to make it clear that he feels Black Americans are a problem. So there is that separation when people decide to do it. And I think what you're hearing other people say, when you're hearing people like Tariq Nasheed say, again, I may not agree with everything, but what you're hearing people like Tariq Nasheed say is that Black Americans need to be able to do that too. This guy sat right there and just disrespected, and he's done it over and over again. I'm telling you, like, that is his stick. I've seen this guy talk so badly about Black women, Black American women, Black American men, using white racist terms against Black Americans. So when other people want to do that, they do that. And that's what I was trying to get across to Mark when we had that conversation last year. This part right here is where Piers goes wild.
Natural human instinct. Like, we are literally designed to want to be in communities and want to be a part of a set of community because it ensures our survival. It's been that way since the beginning of time. So the thing is that people are typically going to align with people that share similar features. And that's why we have the tribalism we have going on right now. So the problem is it's not going to go anywhere. I think the problem is that we've had this penting up for literally decades, and this has been a response to it. You have people that are coming out and supporting someone who you guys might deem as a terrible racist, but I think it's also very important to understand how we got here, because if we're going to look at the smaller problem, we can't look at the bigger problem. And it's what I said before, unchecked systemic. All
right, Mark Lamont Hill.
So he can, and what they're bleeping the N-word because he was throwing around the N-word, right? You see, he want to use like Black slang and language and all that kind of stuff, but he still want to let you know he not one of us, but he want to be able to use our culture and our language, which I don't even say the N-word, when it benefits him to do so. He can sit up there and say, let me tell you how we got here to defend the racist white woman, but he's not willing to listen to people when they try to tell you, let me explain to you how Black Americans got to where we are. This part.
Last words on this.
This repeated use of the word, I think, first of all, I want to just register that as offensive, particularly as someone who doesn't identify as a member of that community and who is not, right? I think that's incredibly
I'm the definition of African American.
See what I mean? This is, now I see Marcus saying this. Know what he said? He said someone who is not a member of that community. You see what I'm saying? So this is what I tried to tell him last year.
I'm the definition of African American.
And troublesome, and to as a Sudanese American or an outsider who's using African American, the very technical term, the same way that Elon Musk is an African American, I think it is a bit disingenuous. But the bigger issue here, I think, is that, you know, this idea of equating of one side to the other side often loses track of this issue of power. To use his example, when Black people stand up and say, "Hey, let's build our own stuff. Hey, let's have a Black power movement," that is not the same as a white power. I'll let you speak uninterrupted. Let me finish, please, my Sudanese brother. So when a Black person says, "Hey, let's preserve our culture," I have no problem with Italians or Irish people or anyone else saying, "Let's preserve our culture." But when we don't talk about ethnicity, but actual race, and when white people say, "Let's preserve whiteness," it's an exclusionary practice. It's about preserving laws and practices and tactics that do harm to other people. A Black power movement was about opening stores and building businesses. A white power movement was a white power movement was about something very, 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 very different. A white power movement who included lynchings and included Ku Klux Klan, etc. So let's not pretend that these are opposite sides of the same coin. When white people say, "Let's save our country," and even using language of our country, when Black people built this thing, when you say that, you're talking about forcing people out of the country. You're talking about laws that discriminate. You're talking about doing harm to people. Let's not pretend these are the same thing. Just like these GoFundMe campaigns are not the same thing. I'm okay if everybody gets out of the GoFundMe industrial complex. I'd love that. But let's not pretend that supporting someone for a fair trial is the same thing as supporting a grown white woman berating and calling the N-word to a 5-year-old autistic Black child. And the fact that everyone in here can't be unanimous in condemning that says exactly how they're not the same.
I totally agree. I'm going to go to...
So Piers Morgan here says he totally agrees. And Mark, we're going to have to get you better Wi-Fi because I notice your picture is going a little blurry. But he says he totally agrees. But watch what he does after.
Lily Gaddis, and just ask you one more time. I mean, you've been so unashamedly proud of being a racist today, proud of using the N-word whenever you feel like it. You've had a bit of time to think about this. Is that how you want people to leave this panel debate, with thinking of you as a disgusting racist?
I don't really care what people think about me. As long as you care about what people think about you, you have no power and you lose your country. What I care about is freedom of speech. And if you're not allowed to say the most offensive things in this country, you do not have freedom of speech. I don't care what anybody says. So
you're allowed to say it, but it's not without consequence. That's the thing. You're allowed to say these things, but you can't get mad if there's consequence.
that's the main crux of this situation. That's what I care about with this situation. It is, we have lived for far too long in a country where you can have your life destroyed and people say, oh, she doesn't need this money. Her life's destroyed, by the way. She'll never be able to get another job. She's got children to have to support. And I don't want to live in a country where you can say an inappropriate, rude thing, which, by the way, Black people can say things to white people all the time and they never get canceled. There's no backlashing about this. I want to live in a country where people are allowed to say what they want unashamedly, and you will
go
not
on then,
have
say
free,
it. Say
you
the
will
M-
not have
go on,
free
say
speech.
go on, say the M word. Go on.
That part right there. Right? So do you see what Piers Morgan just did there? Some people saw that and they said, well, Piers was just trying to like press her buttons. Some people saw it and they said it's disrespectful for him to even entertain that with MARC Lamont Hill sitting there. I think Piers was trying to get a rise for ratings, for views. I think this is what I was saying before. I feel like this show, it just basically became like a Jerry Springer thing where, as before in the beginning, I felt like the conversations were a little bit more, I don't know, meaty, like it, and now it's just like, let's get the shock and awe that we can get from this. And so watch what MARC Lamont Hill says. I will say this as well, though. Mark, I feel like fell for the trap because this is exactly what they wanted to get Mark to do, because once Mark lashed out the way that he's about to, that you're going to see, of course, all of like people like Matt, what's his name? Matt Walsh, all these like, you know, right-wing people, all these, and the racists, they were like, oh my God, this person is completely unhinged, which is exactly what they want. See for yourself.
No. Don't invite. No. I don't want you to invite this woman to say a racially harmful term in front of me, because I'm the only on here. So if she says it, I'm the victim of it. So please don't invite her for ratings to call me the N-word, because that's basically what it's going to be. There's a bunch of white people up here. You and one Uncle Tom on the left here, and asking her to say the N-word while I'm here is ridiculous. You would not sit here with a Jewish person and say, please use a Jewish slur in front of this Jewish. It's ridiculous. I understand you don't have any bad intent, Piers. I understand what you're trying to do, but we already know she's
Mark,
racist,
I hear you.
and I don't want to invite a racial harm to me.
I hear you, and I.
Notice how Myron Gains and the racist white woman laughed when he lashed out, right? Now, I think that Mark was justified in his anger, but them laughing just goes to show that's what they wanted. They wanted him to get angry like that. They wanted him to get upset, because then they can point to him and say, oh, look at him. He's losing control. He can't even handle himself and da-da-da, right? And to Mark's point, when he said, you would not sit up here, Piers, and tell someone to say, you know, a slur against Jewish people if a Jewish person was on that panel. And Mark is 100% right about that. He wouldn't. So why is it okay for Piers to do that to a Black person?
accept that, and we'll leave it there. Thank you all very much.
Mark did cover this on a show. On a show, he said that he didn't think that Pierce was trying to do harm or, had ill will with that. I guess he has more faith in Pierce than I do, because I just don't. I think Pierce is doing what works for him, for views, for ratings, whatever, etc. I think he's doing what works for that, and he's trying to get the most outrageous comments that he can get and capture it as a soundbite. That's what I think Pierce is doing. I would not give him as much credit as MARC Lamont Hill was willing to give him. I will say that much. But I'll also say this. I know some people said that Mark shouldn't have gone on there with those guests. From what I understand, people that go onto the Piers Morgan panels don't always know who's going to be on those panels. So he may not have even known who was going to be on there. So just keep that in mind. But you guys needed to see that. You needed to see like the ridiculousness that's out there. And to hear Mark say, well, Myron, you're not even a part of, like, you're not Black American. You're not a part of my culture. I'm glad Mark said that, because this is what I was trying to explain to him last year. And there's no shade. You guys know I love everybody. It doesn't matter to me what color you are, what race you are. And I have solidarity with all oppressed people. And at the same time, that being said, I tried to make it very clear that Kamala Harris was not a Black American. She can be, look, you be whatever you want to be, but please do not sit up there and try to say that you are from a lineage that you're not from. And that's important, because they have different experiences than those of us who are Black Americans have had in this country. And their struggles are different. And so I just don't want people to misunderstand that. I said the same thing with Barack Obama. Barack Obama is from a different lineage. He does not have the same type of history and struggle that Black Americans had in this country. And people need to understand that, because when you point to people like a Kamala Harris and a Barack Obama and you say, see, they did it, you guys can do it too. They are coming from different countries. They are coming from families who already had money to get them here in the first damn place. It is not the same struggle. And I think Mark had every right to say that. All right, we are going to head into call-in. Eric, I think we do have super chats that you'll want to read, and then we'll do call-in. We'll try to do, a pretty quick call-in, but we'll do call-in tonight.
People in the chat were asking if that woman on that panel on the end in red was a mannequin. She never said anything. I know. We edited her out, but it was just kind of funny. She's just always there. Just doesn't say nothing.
She didn't talk as much during that. Yeah. All right. I'll be right back.
All right. So this is our little intermission period. Excuse me. Where we give Sabrina a little break, and then she'll be setting up the Zoom hangout room. Eric T. Red here at your service, usually in the background, and coming up to the foreground for a couple minutes here, while Sabby takes a little break, and she'll be creating the Zoom room. That's why we don't have it for you quite yet, but we'll have that link for you. And in the Zoom hangout, formerly known as Call-In, that's where we like to hear what you think. Invite anyone and everyone to come on. You can tell us what you think about the stories that Sabby covered tonight, or anything else. Excuse me. Anything else that you want to talk about? Actually, I just happened to see this chat come by asking Sabby, would she go on the Piers show if invited? I think the Piers Morgan show, while it's has a lot of ugliness to it, I think it's probably one of those shows that'd be too big to ignore. It'd be like, would you go on CNN if invited? Well, yeah, because it's just, it's just too many ratings, and you go on and be, I would assume you'd be true to yourself and say your piece. It could be fun to go on there and tell them off. Anyways, let's see. We got some super chats. Let's see here, and some of these go back away to the previous story as well. Thanks for this one from Eddie D. Appreciate it. He says, "Thank you, Sabby," and thanks, Weiss. And from Munich, I'd say, saying, and he says, thanks for the super chat. He says, USA equals land of the free, home of the slave. And thanks for this one, Sparky. Although there's a little overlap, sheriffs and deputies are more on the side of the people, where police are there to protect and do the bidding of the elites. Too bad Rodney saw them as the same. And Sparky also comes in with this one. He says, check and see if the quote unquote racist woman on Piers Morgan has an IMDb page. Is she doing her job as an actress? I think I saw somebody in the chat. This isn't confirmed, but I think somebody in the chat said she's on Fox or something. But I mean, she's playing a role. I mean, what's sad is that, saying, that kind of ugly stuff, gets her money, gets her living, gets her on Piers Morgan. And, it's a disgusting way to make a living, but, people are going to do what they're going to do, right? Thanks for the super chat, Gamble, who says, those identifying as Europeans account for less than 10% of the globe. How do you get our city in copper-colored Aboriginal America? You're centuries-long occupators in a land you've no roots in. I hear you. And thanks for this one, Wasim. I think Myron is possibly Israeli, as they are open Israel to all people of color. And okay, I mean, I think I see what you're getting at, though. That like Israel kind of, in some ways, like the United States, is a land of imports of people from all over the place. And yeah, I mean, what does that even mean to be a member of that country? Thanks for this one from Measured Man, who says, "Yeep, and then bring black woman on his show. They go and degrade themselves. We have to do better, like the real life street stars. God help us all." Thanks for that super chat. And thank you very much, Mad Map in Chicago, who says, "Great show. Thank you." And thanks also, Measured Man, for this super chat. He says, "This is why Jaguar Wright and Ali got their ass on them racist platforms, saying black people need to get over it. It's just a word. They are brainwashed and calling us monkeys. God sits high." Let's see. All right, thanks for this one. Duo the Unicorn. White women benefited the most from our elders getting murdered, bitten by dogs, and cracked over the head during the civil rights movement. They benefited the most from affirmative action and DEI. Yeah, that's certainly a point that Sabrina has made, on the show, that how those affirmative action programs, in the end, especially when you look at the numbers, benefited white women more than anybody, it seems. And thanks for the super chat, Marlon Wells. Most so-called black people are the American Indians. Ray classified to displace us from the land, and that's why I am no longer triggered by the N-word button. All right, and thanks for this super chat, Measured Man, who says, "This is why we speak life into our children like Dion. It's armor for the cold world, confidence." Thanks for those. And just before we jump over to the Substack, I wanted to highlight briefly the latest Substack post from the 11 Demand Substack, and I'll just go through it quickly here, and you can hopefully check it out at your leisure. In fact, I'll put the link to it in the chat. But yeah, this one's called "Settling for the Lesser Evil Gets You the Greater," and this was kind of when people would talk about how at least the Democrats aren't as bad as Trump and this kind of thing. And so the overall point here is that it's both parties are the same. It's the uniparty. I think most of you have probably seen these famous pictures of just how bad of enemies they are. And of course, behind closed doors, they yuck it up together. And, in the last shot on the right here are some of the billionaires who really call the shots. But, the game goes like this. You have two political parties that at their core represent the interests of the top 0.1%. One of those parties is portrayed as right-wing, unapologetic and brazen when it comes to serving the billionaires and the mega corporations, the war machine. The other party is presented as the left-wing party, speaking in endless platitudes about doing right by the working class, but in the end, end up being too weak or confused to get the job done. They are not weak and confused. They are corrupt. Both parties are playing their roles. It's theater, and it's meant to distract the 99% away from their potential power. The role of the left-wing party is to gather up any and all reformist energy and redirect it back into the duopoly, while at the same time delivering as few tangibles as possible. And then, we have some examples here. Democrats, they promise health care, they give you health insurance. The Republicans thwart even the smallest gains. And meanwhile, the war machine rages on, delivering massive profits for the military-industrial complex. Yet the supposed anti-war Democrats and Republicans refuse to do something as basic as exit from their warmongering parties. This is one thing I really like to put out there, and I'd like people to just keep in mind that really any analysis that portrays the Democratic and Republican parties as significantly different entities is flawed. It's a game. The party you think is less bad is simply enabling the back and forth. It's not about left-right. It's about up-down. As long as enough of us are rooting for one or the other, the corporate establishment wins. There is a way out of this. And step one is about recognizing and breaking out of the uniparty game. Step two is getting clear about the demands of the 99%. The 11 demand strategy is about bringing people together and leveraging those demands into real change. And then these parts are from the strategy. If a candidate doesn't support them, then no money, no praise, no nothing. Call them corrupt. If you have a party or a candidate that is supporting the demands, then give them your support. Give them as much as you can. When roadblocks are encountered, intensify direct actions, more protests, more general strikes, sit-in and boycotts, but always backed by those clear and concise demands. And then make it your mission to educate everyone about MCDS, money, corruption, demands, and solutions. Be relentless about pointing out the real source of our problems, the billionaires and the mega corporations. It's the top 0.1% versus the rest of us. That is the fight. And that is the latest 11 demands Substack. And I'll throw it in the chat again, and please do join that Substack, and you get more posts, and we can talk about it in the old call-in.
Great. All right, we are going to go ahead and hop into call in, ladies and gentlemen. That link is pinned to the very top of the live chat there. I already opened up the room. I like to open it while I'm on the stream. If you come in a little bit later, we won't have a long call in tonight, but if you come in a little bit later, you can also find that link on sabbysabs2.com to join that conversation. I ask that everyone please mute their mic when they join. If you want to speak, at the bottom of the screen, there's an option to raise your hand, and that's how I know to call on you to speak and give your 2 cents. And Eric, once you join in, I'll go ahead and make you a co-host.
All right. Sabby Sabs 2 should be set up. Actually, I have to go and do that. And let me use it to get in on my side. We'll make sure it works.
Great. And I see people have already joined the call-in, and people already have their hand raised. So people are ready to go.
They are on it.
Cool.
Just getting in now. It's asking me a question it should know the answer to. Let me raise my hand.
All right. I see you, Eric, there.
There we go.
And all right. I just made you a co-host.
Sounds good. Let me get these things on. All right. We'll see you in the call-in.
All right, guys. Have a good night. I am not live tomorrow night. I have a couple of things going on. Plus, I have that panel with Jill Stein Saturday night. So I should Sunday is Mother's Day. So I should see you guys again Tuesday evening. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.